All right, the time is 10:04. Welcome to the Upper Captiva Fire and Rescue District Board of Commissioner meeting. Present at the table, we have Commissioner Burns, Commissioner Hammond, Interim Chief Cottrell. On Zoom, we have Commissioner Fry and Commissioner Phillipsack. So all 5 commissioners are present. Also in the audience today, we have Ed Dotz, Bill Hauser, Cindy Payne. Welcome. I think this is your first meeting, so welcome, guys. And on Zoom, it looks like we have AJ LaValle, former board member. Welcome, AJ. Bonnie Whitmore, David Bolme, Ed Bose, Carrie Williams, and Sarah Hammond, and Zeke McDonald. Welcome, everyone. So this is a continued meeting from our legally noticed meeting on August 30th due to a lack of quorum resulting from Hurricane Idalia. We had to continue the meeting. And before we get started today, I just wanted to, bring up a couple things that I feel are important. One of which is I think we need to move the pace of the meetings a little bit quicker, rather than back and forth and having 3 to 4 hour meetings. So I would ask for everyone to try to be concise with their points. And the second part is respect. So board member conduct and audience. There's a level of respect that I believe that the audience and the commissioners should adhere to. Whether we have to create a civility code, I don't know. That will be determined, but I do ask, and I think Van sent an email about a couple weeks ago. I just ask for respect. And if you don't agree with the person, thank you for your comment. That's the way I'd like to handle it, because things have been getting a little out of hand over the last couple months. All right. So,
hey, Duncan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Duncan, can I add something to that?
Go ahead,
I think
Michael.
it's important that everybody. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, yeah. Hey, I just think it's important that everybody present at the meeting understands where this civility part is coming from. I'd like to read for everybody pieces of an email that Bill Fry sent to me on August 15th at 11:35 a.m. Here's how it starts. Mike, no response is necessary or wanted, but you are the dumbest motherfucker I've ever met. Bill's email went on about 10 paragraphs of speculation, innuendo, conspiracy theory, and other nonsense, and then ends with, feel free to this email or be like AJ and whine at a board meeting that I called you a dumb motherfucker and it made you cry. It'll be good for some laughs, at least to me. So I just want everybody present to know the level of immaturity and unprofessionalism that Bill Fry exhibits.
And
Further,
okay, go ahead, Michael.
Further, excuse me, Duncan, further, to the 36 people or so who actually voted for Bill, I would like for you all to consider his childish and unprofessional behavior when he's up for re-election in November 2026. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And I want to make this clear. I do not want to make this a back and forth. We're just, at this point, we're asking for respect amongst the board members and amongst the community. And thank you for your comment. So moving on, do we have any additions, changes, or deletions to the agenda? I know Bill has a couple. Bill Burns, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Duncan. Yeah, I had 2 that I had sent emails out requesting they be added. I don't know why they weren't, but they are in random order. Both of these would go under new business, I assume. Brief discussion about the proposed zoning changes applied for by the Rum Road Collective. And also a discussion of the sunshine law violations that may have been committed by this board. I think it's important we have that discussion now. What at this meeting?
Okay. Any other additions, changes, or deletions to the agenda?
Yes,
I think we should delete. Oh, go ahead.
I have one change that I would like to make. the status of chief candidates and certifications. I would like to bring that up to the front, certainly before we talk about budget or any of those type of topics. And I actually propose that we make a vote on our next chief during this meeting. So I'd like to make that top of the agenda.
So 5A, is that correct? Make that 5A then,
Yeah, make it
or
5A or,
before 5A?
yeah,
Okay.
sometime in new business.
Okay.
Get that done. Then we're to point to that.
I would also like to delete 6G and H, and that goes to the point that we just discussed about respect amongst the board members. I don't think that that's gonna bring any positive comment to the meeting today.
I'm sorry, why would that not bring positive comment?
So if the board
Commissioners, each of the 5 commissioners do positive things for the district, and they deserve to have their chance to talk about them.
So if the board member chooses to discuss their opinion or discuss how they feel about a certain budget issue, then I think that they could speak at any time. I don't think we need written reports that don't have substance. But that's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. How do the other board members feel?
But you're thinking there's going to be no substance?
Bill,
I agree with you, Duncan. We all know that this is an attempt by Bill Fry to manipulate the agenda for his own purposes. Duncan, you do the right thing, eliminate unnecessary items from the agenda, and let's move the business forward.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I have the proposed budget amendment to add to the new business.
Okay, what is that, Bill?
I have the proposed new budget amendment as new business.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, do we have any other additions, changes, or deletions to the agenda? All right, moving on to public comment on agenda items. Is there any public comment on agenda items? Okay, let's go ahead and dive into the minutes. I have a copy for you. What's the date on those minutes? Does anyone have it in front of them?
Yeah.
21st of July.
Okay, do we have any changes, edits, comments regarding the July 21st meeting? All right, any comments? Well, may I have a motion to accept the minutes from the July 21st board meeting?
I move we accept the minutes as they are.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Hammond, second by Commissioner Burns. Any further discussion or public comment? All in favor to accept the July 21st minutes? Aye.
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 Okay. Moving on to the treasurer's report. No, sorry, excuse me. Moving on to new business. Before 5A would be status of chief candidates, Commissioner Hammond.
Right, so, been in contact with Kelly Callan. First of all, he reached out, while the hurricane was passing by and expressed his support in any way, shape, or form, that he could do remotely, to help us during the storm, and he was very concerned. I greatly appreciate that. But to date, we have not been able to break through the Ocala paperwork and get his application accepted. He is still pressing on that, and he intends on finalizing his, and becoming a Florida firefighter. He is very determined. The words I think he used was he was insulted. His fire chief that prepared the packet of information was insulted that that they're getting rejected off the hand without any consideration at all. So Ocala has a real problem without a state people coming in, and that's an issue that we need to at least be aware of. I don't know if there's anything we can do about it. But however, I believe that we are at a point where I'd like to call for a vote on the chief. Right now, the only viable candidate is Jesse Cottrell. I don't think I have to go elaborate too much on his qualifications and his performance over the last 7-8 months, steering the department out of the ditch and back up onto the road. And of course, of late, all the hurricane prep and response that we've experienced has been fantastic. So I would like to call for a roll call vote where we select Chief Jesse as our new fire chief, and finalize this chapter in our history here.
And
I second the
presumably-
motion to hire Chief Cottrell as our permanent fire chief.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Let's bring it to discussion regarding Jesse becoming our next chief.
Jesse, last month you told us you had to wait 4.5 or 5 years. What changed?
Nothing's changed.
You still gonna be working on the disease spread?
That's correct.
And how are you gonna work full-time here and full-time there?
So I work 10 shifts there a month, and I've been working more than 8 shifts here a month. That's what I can offer. And that's what was presented to me, 8 to 10 shifts a month, and I'll be more than happy to work those.
Are you gonna attend all the meetings and training sessions on days off if you don't get any days off between here and there?
What training sessions here?
Well, okay, so let's just talk about meetings.
I'll be here. Have I missed one? I've missed one meeting in the last 9 months.
Lee County Fire Chiefs
I'll
Association.
make those as well.
What is your current ranking, Benita?
I'm a firefighter, EMT, or firefighter paramedic.
Okay, because on your resume it says lieutenant.
It says acting lieutenant. I'm also that.
I'm kind of wondering why all these questions weren't asked over the last 5 weeks or the last 5 months.
The answer to that is simple. Until 2 minutes ago, this wasn't an issue. We had voted to, actually, I believe the Van had made a motion to wait 30 days to see if Mr. Callen could clear up his paperwork. And obviously the 30 days came and went. Obviously, it's still an issue. And this was just presented today.
I think the questions are fair. What I'd like to add is, I think your performance speaks for itself. So 16 years as an employee here at the district. I don't know if there's anyone tenured longer than you here at this time. I know it's part-time, 16 years, but so that's something that we can definitely, thank you for. Organizing the group after the coup happened in January, and getting the employees to come back, that was impressive. And I did call it a coup because I believe it was an organized coup. And to see our schedules completely full, I was in the office the other day, Microsoft Word was up, and we had a full schedule. Maybe had a list of backups even. So I think our stability is, we're very stable here from a staffing point of view, which was our main concern. And not only do we have more employees now, but we have more paramedics. So on these shifts, if you look at the schedule from a staffing point of view, there's, lieutenant paramedic, then there's paramedic. There's multiple paramedics, which is very impressive to me. I've said this in previous meetings, so it doesn't come as a surprise, but I, look at the guy's performance. And then most recently, the communication and leadership going through Adalia. I know Adalia wasn't Ian, but Jesse was here throughout the entire week at the station. He staffed an extra guy. There were 5 guys at the station. One of the senior guys brought in his own boat to help with shift change when Island Girl wasn't running. I can go on and on and on. I just feel like Jesse's performance has been incredible. So Any other, other board members can certainly ask Jesse questions. That's where I stand. I'm very comfortable with Jesse being our next chief.
I've got a couple questions if I could, Duncan.
Yeah, just one thing I forgot to add is, our last chief, he was down to 2 1/3 shifts per pay cycle. So if you do the math, you're somewhere between 2 and 2.5 shifts per pay cycle. Go ahead, Mike.
You mean per week, don't you?
Excuse me, per week. Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 per pay.
Yeah,
cycle.
yeah.
Not per week.
9 per
Yeah.
month.
Sorry, yeah,
No,
per week.
5 per month.
Go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
So, yeah, thank you, Duncan. Hey, Jesse, I was just curious because I did see your communication over the course of the latest hurricane, which thankfully didn't really affect us. I thought that you would have been committed to your home department, Bonita Springs, during that period, and yet you said you were out on the island. Can you explain to us again what your commitment is to your first and primary job versus this job when it comes to a state of emergency?
So as it stood, my day to work in Bonita was Tuesday of this past week when Idalia hit. I already spoke to the chief about taking time off to go to the GO divisional meeting for the chiefs of Lee County. They were having a meeting that morning on Tuesday. So then I approached the chief afterwards and said, look, that meeting's been canceled. I'm going to extend my holiday or my vacation time off for the next 24 hours to stay on the island and make sure I'm here for the island and make sure everything runs here. And he was fine with that. So
was there a state of emergency declared in Bonita Springs and or on our island or not?
The state of emergency throughout the state, you mean the 37 counties?
Whatever it is, it would require you to go to Bonita Springs and not North Captiva.
So in short, the way our hurricane policy is written, the chief has the ability to cancel all leave if there is a hurricane impending upon our area. This was a tropical storm. We didn't bring shifts in early. We didn't keep shifts after. It was considered more like a rainstorm versus an actual hurricane. In the event of a hurricane, I would definitely approach my chief and speak to him. And if I needed to be out here, I would take leave without pay from Bonita Springs to make sure the island was taken care of. Him and I have had this conversation. It's not that big of, I can't say it's not that big of a deal, but what it is he understands what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, but by the same logic, he could say, no, we're expecting a direct hit from a hurricane and you're required to be in Bonita Springs. There is no leave. We need you here. Is that correct?
Correct.
So Jesse, in the event of,
All right.
could you walk us through a little bit about your, the leadership staff that you put together and their availability?
So the command staff is 3 retired guys. I'm the only working guy. The other guys are retired, and they've all committed to me that they would be here in time of emergency, as well as the retirees of Trent Bowen, John Lindsay, a few of the other guys John Wayne, they've all committed that if we were to have a direct hit, they would be willing to come out and assist in whatever the island needed, as long as, of course, their houses aren't impacted or whatnot. But they're definitely on board to support the island and the department.
Very good. Could I ask one more question, Duncan?
Absolutely.
And I don't know if Van or Bill Fry is best to answer this, but could you guys just give us an idea? And I'm not talking about exact figures, but the general difference in total pay to have Jesse work in his current schedule versus Kelly Callan. Could you just give us an idea what that difference is?
Bill Fry, do you happen to have one of those spreadsheets?
Yeah, in ballpark figures, and it's not exact because I'm not going to try to find the spreadsheet from 4 months ago, but roughly $180,000 to $190,000 for Kelly for pay and benefits. And I think in this budget, we're proposing somewhere around 75,000 in pay and benefits, or just under that for Jesse. That's the difference between working 2 shifts per week and 4 shifts per week.
Yeah, and
Plus,
that's,
of course, no rental house and other various benefits.
yeah, and Bill, I think that number is somewhat misleading because you're strictly talking about the chief, you know, the chief's contribution to the bottom line. There is a difference in the number of shifts, I believe, and with Jesse, we do have to cover a couple extra shifts with regular paramedics or firefighters. So the total doesn't, the delta in the total budget wouldn't be the difference there straight in the salary, but it's not much.
Yeah,
And Kelly-
yes, that wasn't Mike's question though. But Van, you're correct. Roughly, and you can see it in the documents that you should have in front of you in the budget. We're paying for another part-time chief for another 2 shifts per week, and that's in the neighborhood of around $60,000 to $65,000. So the net is Kelly would, again, spitballing it without looking at the documents directly, somewhere between $25,000 and $35,000. Most of that would be the rental house, if not all of it.
Right, that's what I had, you know, if you put those things together, delta 50,000 is probably a little bit less than that as well. So the total budget is reduced by somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 between the two.
That neighborhood is correct, yes.
Yeah, I think that agrees with my recollection of those numbers. And then just to clarify, then the district would get a bit of a windfall from the fact that Jesse has a second full-time job up in Bonita Springs, so we're not covering benefits and other things. But then 5 years from now, that would obviously reset to a different number, I assume, when Jesse retires from Bonita Springs and potentially comes on as the full-time chief on Upper Captiva. Is that right, Jesse?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And do you mind talking about the experience of the command staff, just to give a rundown
Sure.
to the people on Zoom of, you know, what kind of caliber staff that you're proposing here?
So Tom Tracy, the assistant chief, he spent, I believe it was 4 to 5 years in EMS, from 18 to I think 24, and then from 24 until he just retired at Sanibel Fire Department. He's a captain paramedic there. He's a credentialed medic here as well. Rob Dewar is pretty much, he had a Navy background. I think he spent 4 to 6 years in the Navy. And then he worked as a firefighter paramedic for Sanibel Fire Department as well, and retired a few years ago, and has been here pretty much working 6 to 8 shifts a month. He's agreed to 6 to 8 shifts a month. Tom Tracy's agreed to 6 to 8 shifts a month. John Trujillo, Deputy Chief of EMS, he worked for the county EMS for I believe 8 or 10 years, and then another 25 years for the city of Fort Myers. He was a driver, engineer, paramedic. He has every credential and every cert under the book. He's agreed to work anywhere from 4 to 7 shifts a month. He's currently out on vacation right now, but with the command staff that we have in place and the lieutenants and everything else, I believe we're pretty well covered for the most part.
And I did notice that, you know, Rob Doer, you know, he was here for the duration while you were here during the storm. That was one of the concerns I had, is watching to see what would happen when a storm approached, just like Michael's concern. And also, for what it's worth, the public, in some of the Facebook groups and including the one in the fire department Facebook site, I mean, it's been extremely complimentary. I know that's not a way for us to judge your performance per se, but I think the overall consensus is that they were very pleased with your communication leadership during the storm. And thankfully it wasn't, like Ian, but we still had some challenges. Heck, you had a fire that you had to go and put out during the storm. If we didn't have our fire department here, that could have been pretty ugly.
Okay,
So we have a motion and a second. Now I'd like to open it up.
Since everyone else talked about and asked the same questions and issues for that we've had for a couple months. My first question to Jesse is, you walked through your command staff, but I believe at last month's meeting, you told the board that you had, in addition to the command staff that's now mostly retired and potentially available during the time of a hurricane, you mentioned a number of other individuals that have committed to responding on the island after a hurricane evacuation, if you are mandatory in Bonita Springs. Could you walk through a little bit of that for the group again, especially for the public?
Sure. So we have a few people that don't work at other fire departments that were willing to come out here, which is Caitlin Robb, Dylan Moran. They're both not employed at a fire department. I think I mentioned John Wayne. You got the 3 deputy or assistant chief and 2 deputy chiefs. You got Trenton Bowen, John Lindsay, who's a lieutenant out here as well. These guys have all got, the gentlemen that are retired have at least 30 years experience in the fire service. So I think that's a total of 7 that I verbally spoke to and have all given me the agreement that they will do everything in their power to come out and help me in times of emergencies.
Yeah, that assumes that their own personal circumstance, their own homes and families are in a good enough position, because we can't mandatory them in like we would full-time firefighters.
That's correct.
My second point is to reiterate what we've said for the last 2 or 3 months, and I think what Duncan also said is that for the community, I think I've been very happy with the work that you've done, Jesse, and I'd remind the rest of the public that the last 2 contracts that the prior boards approved for the last chief had him down to 2 1/3 shifts per week. Jesse is committed to at least 2 shifts per week, and I honestly don't see much of a difference in that. It equates to 1 shift difference over 6 pay periods. Sorry, 3 pay periods. So I think we should ask if there's any public comment.
Okay, first, are there any other comments from the board members, or can I open it up to public comment?
Well, I've been in the fire service for a long time. I've never had a part-time chief. I'd be absolutely no disrespect. You and I have been friends for a long time, right? I gotta think about this. I gotta think about this, and if we could, our next meeting is a week. Can I have a week to think about it? Can we go next week? Is anything major going to change in every next 7 days? I need time to ponder this, because again, we've never had this situation out here. We never had this situation in my volunteer company up in New Jersey. There was always somebody in charge 24 hours a day, whether that was his shift or he was home. And I'm having trouble right now just rationalizing that here comes Ian, or an Ian supplement. You're in Bonita Springs. Just like after Ian, none of these guys can get out here, only one. And you're not available to be organizing things to try to get people out here. It very well may work out, but having this brought up 15 minutes ago, I just need to think about it a little bit.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely, absolutely.
What's going to change in a week, even if you ponder it for a week?
I don't want,
Okay, fair enough.
if I knew, then I probably wouldn't have to ask for it.
So I'd like to say I was at work yesterday, working in Bonita, and I was on the phone for roughly 3 hours, making sure these guys had water here. Working from Bonita, making sure this place had water, electricity was getting taken care of. I reached out to Robbie and the one from LCEC. So I'm just, I'm not offended.
in any way.
Look,
Question what you've done.
For the last 7 months, I have said multiple times, find somebody, I would be more than happy to pass the torch. It's not a problem. I'm not offended by any means.
I again believe that the board has had their comments. Nothing has changed in the board's comments the last 3 or 4 months related to Jesse specifically. I think we should open it up to public comment, and then I would want to call the question.
All right, do we have any comments, questions from the public? Anyone in the room here? Anyone on Zoom?
Yeah, Duncan, I have a question. And
Go ahead, David.
so this has nothing to do with qualifications, Jesse, or other, it's more procedural question.
Yes, sir.
So for a long time, there's been all of these outcries for 7 days notice of things coming up to be voted on, so the public might be informed and consider and attend meetings and have comment. And I know there's been an ongoing discussion about potential chiefs candidates for a long time. What changed in the middle of the week that would have put this on the agenda today without that notice?
I mean, I think this is something that we've been, discussing for the last several months now, as an option. So to me, it's not anything new.
Yeah, I believe it was back in July when we agreed to, I'll say, kick the can down the road a little bit and to give the candidates at that time, Bob Wirtz and Kelly, give them time to get their paperwork straightened out with Ocala and so that they could be viable candidates. We all liked it when we interviewed them, and they were we had a quorum of 3. It's been now over 2 months since that, since we did that, and I think it's time to close the chapter on here. We're not going to go, open up a search. I'm very dead set against doing that. I think, and quite honestly, I think this has sort of been a try before you buy type of experience with Jesse. We didn't plan it that way, but this is the way it's worked out. He stepped up after in December after the Exodus and has really picked up the ball and ran with it. And
So Van,
very pleased with that.
again, this is not about qualifications. Don't get me wrong. This is a simple question of the need for this to be on the agenda for people to know it's coming so that they could be here to discuss if they had public comment. That's my question. The vote today was not on, I could be wrong. Maybe it was added to the agenda. I don't think it was on the agenda. So it seems like a question of procedure right now to me.
What David is saying is under what originally was recurring business updates B, status of chief candidates, Florida certifications.
What month did we open up the search process for the chief? Do you remember?
Well, it was over Christmas, but I think officially January.
I mean, and we've been talking about this every meeting. I mean, this is just the process of narrowing it down.
Could I correct David's comment? Actually, Van's comment response back to David.
So yeah, good.
So at the July 21st meeting 5 weeks ago, we said we would give the 2 candidates that did not have Florida certifications 30 days. And we said we would be looking to make a decision at what was the 16th of August meeting, turned into the 31st of August meeting, turned into today. So if David, if I need to go through the recording and find that specific language, I would be glad to do that. And
I'm,
in fact,
yeah,
I would be glad to include the link to that specific language into the minutes that I create for this meeting. But it's been an ongoing topic now every month since January. And Van said July at the July meeting 2 months ago. Well, it was the July meeting 5 weeks ago. But otherwise, what he said was correct. We said we would give the candidates 30 days to continue to work with Ocala to find out if they could be qualified as firefighters in Florida, which is a prerequisite to be a chief. And in that time, I think less than a week later, I think I understood that Bob Wirtz withdrew and took a job back in Illinois.
Okay.
Kelly, of course, is on the line. So this has been a continuing topic. I am sure we had a discussion last meeting on the 21st of July that we would make a decision today.
Okay, so that's good. My question only is asked for procedural reasons and for someone to explain that, so that people have jumped on this call and don't understand that, and then they're saying what happened, that they don't understand that. That is why I'm asking this question. Because
so to answer that procedural question, I think, is that the Florida statute requires us to publish.
Bill, we're gonna just move on to the next question.
Well, no, some of this addresses a comment that Bill Burns made at the start as well about adding things to an agenda. The Florida statute requires us to publish our agenda 7 days before a meeting. And I send out reminders that of that on a not a frequent basis, but I say it at most every meeting. The reason that the agenda for today was not changed is this is a continuation of the agenda that was published originally for the meeting on the 31st. So that's the only document that Florida statute now requires, that changed about 4 years ago, for us to give 7 days notice. But so that procedural thing related to agendas, if there's a change in the agenda or a proposed change to the agenda that is given to me or anyone else that sits at the table, and it's more than 7 days or less than 7 days before the meeting date, and an agenda has already been published, the only time to make the change is during the meeting, as we just did today, and as we do at every other meeting.
okay, so my point is if we're going to be, this is, as long as we're being consistent with all topics now and future, then it's all good. I have no concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you,
Do we
David.
have questions from the public on Zoom? Any objections for any particular reason to Jesse?
I'm sorry, this is Kelly Callan here. I had missed the first. Yeah, how you doing? Yeah, I'd missed the first good part of this meeting, over 30 minutes of it. But I kind of got the gist of what's going on. Like I said, I've worked about as fast as I can with the reciprocity. I've been taking classes. I'm scheduled to take a class up here that I'm actually paying for. But trying to get to Ocala, it's a very difficult process. And again, I'd just like to reiterate, I think Jesse's a fine individual. I think he's done a terrific job. And for you guys to vote for him, I don't think you're going to lose a thing. That would be my part of it. I mean, it could be another 6 months for Ocala would work with me. So to get the stability in that fire department, I think Jesse's is just the perfect candidate for that. That's my 2 cents.
Kerry Williams, go ahead.
Yeah, make sure in your deliberations that you look at the chat messages that are being posted, okay? There's an interesting one there from Brad, and I think you need to make sure you read that stuff.
Okay, would someone be able to?
Is Brad not able to ask the question directly?
I don't have a question per se, but I will say that this is what I wrote. We, the residents of the island, have elected you guys to make the decision.
Right now, are you?
What?
Your Zoom picture came up as flying an aircraft. Are you?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
You don't want to see me right now, trust me.
Otto is flying.
I would say we elected you guys to make this decision. You should hire him, in my opinion. And if the public doesn't like the board's decision, they can speak with their vote at the next election. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? All right, so we do have a motion and a second. No further comments from this point. I would.
One question.
Yeah,
Can I
go ahead.
just, hey, Duncan, can I ask one more clarifying question? Is there any, so we're not contemplating any sort of contract, right? We're just continuing the way he's working now.
I think that we would probably continue, but in the meetings to come, build a contract of some sort. That's my opinion, and give Jesse some benefits such as retirement. I think those are things we could build a contract going forward. But as of right now, I think we're just formalizing our leader, and we can get a contract going in the next couple of months. That's where I stand. I'm not sure
Mike,
where the other board.
to be clear, I've asked for nothing else other than to keep
Okay.
these. And a potential.
Okay.
hiring. If the
All right,
board's-
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Bill?
Well, actually, Mike asked first, quick question. I was going to ask, so thank you for that. But just dovetailing into what you said earlier and what Kelly just said, he's still in the hunt. Let's project out 6-8 months down the road, and Ocala accepts him. Is your offer to step aside at that point still going to be valid, or are you going to say, no, I'm the chief, go away?
Absolutely, would never do that. I would do whatever's best for the item,
Okay, thank you.
whatever's best for the department.
And Jesse made a comment to me and said, well, you know, if things don't work out as the chief, can I still work at the department? I mean, that's the kind of guy you're talking to here is, you know, he's committed to this department. He still wants to work here. And I think you've already proven, you know, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but that's the kind of guy we're dealing with here. So I would like to call a voice vote now that we had all the discussion and public comment. So we'll start out with Bill Fry,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Bill Burns,
Yes,
Dan,
Yes.
and yes from me. So that 5-0. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
My condolences, Jesse.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill.
And we forgot to mention the fact that he can deal with all 5 of us. That's the part.
Well, yeah,
That's the most challenging part is dealing with all of us, all the different personalities. Now, Bill Burns, I'd like to ask you a question, just in case, you know, you were the chair previously. You know, I did bring an oath of office just in case this was the situation that we're dealing with. How do you recommend, do you swear him in now, or do you recommend swearing him in future meetings? So I'm asking from your experience.
it could be done now, but we need a notary, I believe. We don't have one. We should schedule one for a week from now.
Okay, so I think a week from now, we'll go ahead and officially swear you in.
Don't break.
Not
anything.
as part of the budget hearing. That would be a violation.
Well,
It
that's
can
Saturday.
be before or after, but not as part of a meeting.
Yeah,
No, it's Saturday. Budget meeting is Saturdays.
and regular monthly meeting. Mhm.
Is budget meeting concurrent with our regular meeting?
Yes,
It can't be, I thought. Yes, we can. I thought Saturday was our budget meeting, because that's what I have in my calendar.
Saturday is the regular meeting and also the first budget hearing.
Bill Pryor, you good with that?
Yeah, I don't care because we just won't be reducing any of the regular meeting agenda. We'll go through the whole thing.
Okay,
All right.
we will do it then a week from today.
I'm here.
We said don't break it.
I'll break it.
All right, so moving on to new business 5A, Commissioner Fry and Chief Cottrell.
So we'll start with the budget presentation, starting on page 2. I asked questions of the commissioners 5 weeks ago at the 21st of July meeting. And all that I got in general terms was for the capital proposal, why don't we take an average of the last 3 or 4 years? So my question for an average of the last 3 or 4 years would be, do we budget for a boat? And if it's a boat, do we know what the mission's going to be since the cost is different? Do we budget for a second brand new fire engine? Because that was budgeted 2 or 3 years ago. Do we budget for a second garage, a third building? That was budgeted 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and then it was added in an amended budget request, a budget submission, July a year ago. As near as I can tell, I haven't seen any specific information on from commissioners on where to make additions. I still believe the last time that I spoke with Jesse, that once he became the permanent chief, he would work with his command staff and the firefighters and begin to work up requirements, potential requirements for a capital plan, and then sequence those into specific proposed budget years. And the time that he would do that would be during the October to December timeframe. So unless one of the commissioners has additions, specific additions, can answer these questions that I asked 5 weeks ago, I still believe that the budget numbers that I worked with Jesse and with Tom and that I've presented for the last 2 months are our starting point for the budget hearing on Saturday. Any
Hey,
comments?
Bill? All right, I don't want to interrupt. Are you good? Okay. Bill, so I had a question, and I believe that Jesse and Tom clarified it for me. I had a couple meetings with them since our last discussion. There is a huge amount of ambiguity on, you know, what's insurance payout going to be, what's the FEMA contribution. We don't know what that looks like. That would go to a lot of the capital if we do well on both those accounts. That would go a long ways to satisfying some of the capital needs that we have here. There's repairs to the building, new windows. This place is desperate for an uplift. You spoke of the fire engine. I know that's an item on the list. We have not had any discussions on the prioritizing this list and the possibility that we pay for it out of our funds that the department normally raises. It's primarily been, the discussions have been around paying for this with the insurance and FEMA money. But I thought that the lack of capital forecast was kind of stood out in the budget. The way they explained it to me is that, we're going to have to ride the surfboard here a little bit until we get a determination on the extra items that could contribute money to their budget. And because of that, we should just go ahead and leave it like it is, like what you say. And with the understanding, though, that, as things go through, we would have to amend the budget going forward. And I know that's something we don't want to do often. It's not good if we have to, every time we meet, we have to, if Jesse needs a piece of equipment replaced or repaired or something new, we don't want to have to go in there and amend the budget every time we meet. But I think given our situation after Ian, it's probably we'll try to minimize it, but probably the only way forward. And I just wanted to get your comment on that. Is that sort of a recap of how you view the world, or do you have other thoughts?
So the only definite number I believe that we have on those unknown revenues is roughly $70,000. I believe that's a definite number, but I'm not willing to suggest or put it into the budget. And the reason for that is $20,000 is in a bit more than $20,000 is in the impact fund. And we have a letter signed on the 22nd of June, 2021 from the Assistant County Attorney that said that effective June 8th, 2021, the district could transfer $14,184.85. That was not done during fiscal 21. That was not done in fiscal 22, and we have not done it in fiscal 23. It also says financial payments for balance of the station costs will be paid from the anticipated future collection impact fee funds in the district. My estimate of that after we use this first $20,000 or $21,000 that's in the impact fund is we generate around $1,500 in impact funds a year. It'll take us slightly less than 150 years to recapture the cost of the garage. Second, we had roughly $50,000 to $51,000 in 2 checks as full and final payment settlement of our insurance claims that we declined. And so I believe that's the starting point or the bottom line number, the floor, if you will, of what our minimum insurance proceeds are going to be. So between that and even if we don't see a FEMA or the insurance proceeds, we'll talk about shortly, but we have somewhere between $450,000 currently in the reserves. And it looks like we're going to add another $200,000 or $300,000 to the reserves if the tentative millage rate is the final millage rate in September. And if in the next topic, we approve the full special assessment roll at the full amount that we've done for the last 9 years. So quite honestly, I don't believe we have a revenue problem. It will be identifying what the capital requirements are, then prioritizing them, hopefully over multiple years. But that isn't my decision. That's a proposal from the chief and his command team. And I get 1 vote, as the other 4 of you get as well. So, Van, did that give you more answer than you wanted? Or not?
No, that's fine. So I guess the expectation is we don't know what we don't know at this point in time. So we're going to just live with that ambiguity. And if when things clarify over the next 12 months, we will vote to use these reserve funds that are increasing. Like you said, we'll use those reserve funds to fund the necessary business that we all agree to.
Yeah, I think, Dan, that was a good recap, is we don't know what we don't know, but we don't know what we don't know both on the capital spending side or the revenue side. The ambiguity, I believe, pretty much offsets them. Unless someone believes you're going to spend $200,000 or $300,000 in capital this year. Next year.
We don't know how Jesse will behave now that he has that surge in power. You know?
That's right. That's long already.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I appreciate that.
Any other questions about page 2? Well, hearing no questions, I'll go on to page 3. Bill Burns, I recapped what I believe the discussions were with my opinions at the bottom. I have not heard a question or a recommended addition either in dollars or in specific capital equipment that you would be proposing for fiscal 24. Have I missed that?
No.
There are no questions on page 3, then we'll go to page 4. Mike, I believe I recapped what it was that was said at the last meeting. As near as I know, I haven't seen or heard any recommendations, specific recommendations on capital items or changes to either pay and benefits or operating recommendations. Do you have any?
Well, here's my thoughts, Bill. I think that based on my comments in the July meeting, we answered the question about a proper budget for the fire chief a few minutes ago when we made Jesse the chief. So that one is off the table. I still have serious questions about our boat and boat operations. I don't believe we have even the first boat that we need right now. And I believe that we're going to need to have somewhat detailed discussions with the public over a reduction in service if we stay with one boat and have no ability to respond on island. And I'd point to a couple examples. So the first would be, and I think Zeke is on the call. If Zeke, pushes off from the safety harbor docks and his boat catches fire in the middle of safety harbor, all we'll be able to do if the single boat is over at Pineland is wave to him from the dock and say, good luck with the fire on your boat. I don't believe that that's really what would happen, though. I think that the firefighters would do whatever they could to help him. And then the question becomes, are we going to have a boat that's able to respond or not? And I'd point to a similar situation out on the beach at the end of Oyster Shell. If somebody's in trouble out on the water, caught in a rip current or whatever, without any kind of response boat, all we can do is stand on the beach and wave to them. And I'm not very comfortable with that. And I may be in the minority, and I'd be, happy to accept that if that's the case. But I think we've got that we need a discussion with the public over what level of service we're going to provide. So I do have an open question on the boat. What's the dollar amount attached to it? Honestly, I don't know. I mean, 100,000, 200,000, take it out of reserves. I could be happy any which way. But I think we need to have that conversation with our constituents. Just thinking back again to my July questions, I'm still, very comfortable with a revenue line item of contributions for $50,000. I realize in the scope of our budget, it's not a major item, but I think it's a bit of fantasy to say, hey, we're somehow going to collect $50,000 from the residents for a special project. And that's not saying that the residents wouldn't be generous enough to offer money, but I just don't think you build a budget around donations or, lemonade stands or whatever. I think there needs to be a reconsideration of that line item. And so those would be my specific remaining concerns.
So Mike, my questions then is, have you sat down with Chief Cottrell and Chief have you sat down with the chiefs and laid out what those specific concerns are, what the range of options are, what the costs of those would be, or are those still unknown unknowns that we're not going to make a decision on in the next 30 days?
Well, I think that they are unknown unknowns, Bill. I did have a conversation with Jesse. He, I think, rightfully has concerns over a MERT response and how many people that would take. I'm not familiar professionally with the details around that, and whether you have to send 3 people on a boat and leave 1 on the island. That to me is not a workable solution. So to answer your question, Bill, I think we've got additional conversation to be had about that. I don't want to get into the next subject yet, but I think that leans toward let's have a really healthy reserve so that we can, in due time, deal with some of these level of service issues with the new chief.
But you agree on the spending side, there is no specific additions that you have that will have an answer in the
That's
next
all
few
I got.
weeks. Slide 5 is Van's comments. I think I'll let Van talk about it.
I think we've already addressed it.
I think we have 2. I
think-
just wanted to give you the chance.
Thank you. Let's skip to the next slide, 6.
Slide 6 was Duncan's. From what I recall, and going through the meetings, I didn't find any issues that he raised and concerns other than millage rate. Duncan, any comments?
One thing I, would like to communicate is I will not push a tax increase, to the district. That's where I would stand, fiscally. There's no reason to at this point. So where I stand on this issue is, if you looked at your presentation where, pull it up, I think it's on a different slide, regarding the millage rate and special assessment options, there's 2 ways to get to the same added revenue figure of the 96,910, and that's in that other in the millage rate examples, the millage example PDF. So, where I stand is either we go the 2.5 with a 447 special assessment, or we go the 3.15 with the 258 special assessment. And as you can see in that presentation, you get to the same bottom line. So that's where I am at right now.
And I guess we'll make that the decision on the special assessment number as we get to the next topic. Any other comments on page 6? So I'm going to recap on page 7. I've recapped what it is that each of the board votes due next month, since it seemed to be some question in at least 1 member of the public and 2 members of the board. I'll say it again. I think I've said it at other meetings. I made a mistake in assuming that Mike and Bill remembered how they voted and what they voted on at last meetings. But then I also realized that Van and Jesse and Tom sitting at the table were the only ones that had not gone through a budget process. And of course, we have a large number in the public. So page 7, I recapped what it is that the board is actually doing each of the budget resolutions that we will pass at the first budget hearing on the 9th of September and the second budget hearing that hasn't been scheduled yet, that gets scheduled next Saturday. Resolutions aren't to put in concrete what it is that we spend money on. The resolution is based on what it is that we have in the way of revenues. And the lion's share of the revenues are special assessment and ad valorem. Special assessment, we're going to set that number currently at 447,400 net after discounts. People take advantage of their early payment discounts. in November, December, January, and February. And we do that in the next topic. And next week, on the 9th, at the first budget hearing, and towards the end of September for the second and final budget hearing, is when we set the millage rate that sets the final tax revenues. So to recap, what it is that we did in July is that we approved a tentative millage rate of 3.15 mils that generates $943,325. That is, I don't have the number in front of me. That number is about $100,000. No, that number is quite a bit more than $100,000 over what was in ad valorem last year. In August, at this meeting now that was continued from August, we will make a decision on the special assessment roll. You see $466,042 in red. That is before early payment discounts. The net is closer to $447,400 if everybody takes advantage of the 4% early payment discounts. We typically average around 3% in past years. And again, in September, we do the preliminary and final millage rate first and second. So what happens with the 3.15 mils is that information was and the resolution that passed, a copy of that went to the state and to the county, and that was at the end of July to satisfy the trim requirements. And that date also for the 9th of September was included in that submission. The official notice, public notice for that first budget hearing is in the trim notice that everyone got in the mail from Lee County Public Appraiser's Office, Property Appraiser's Office, about 2 weeks ago. At the 9th of September meeting, we set the second budget hearing, we set the proposed millage rate, and we figure out what the public notice requirement is. If it is a tax increase, it is a quarter-page ad in the news press, a newspaper that no one on the island receives, and most on the island don't read. This September resolutions don't include individual spending lines, categories, or funds. It is in overall groupings of pay and benefits or personnel, operations, capital, and of course, revenue at the top and reserve at the bottom. Any questions about what it is that the board actually approves, either from the board or the public? Hearing none, we'll go to page 8. In the document, the presentation that's been posted on the website since around the 12th of August, there are hot links to all of the past budget resolutions, either for fiscal 22 for the budget amendment or for special assessment first, second budget hearings, and of course, our most recent tentative millage rate that we set last meeting in July. Any questions about what those resolutions are or the hot links? Those hot links should be active for the commissioners or the public. Hearing none, page 9. One of the questions that came up was that I made a comment during the July presentation that we discovered after Ian, and it wasn't just our district, but a number of other districts in Lee County, that the rollback rate is not meant to generate the same revenue, but the same expected cost for unimpacted taxpayers. That is why the rollback rate for this year's 2.8007, I believe. And that would be equivalent to no tax increase. Any questions about that?
So just so I'm clear, if we were to vote in a rollback rate of 2.8177, that would trigger a notification event. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is the slide from fiscal 23 that Renee created and presented to the board a year ago, September. So
Okay.
our rollback rate is in later slides for this current proposed next year's fiscal year, and I believe it's 2.8007.
So,
But the bottom line answer to your question is the rollback rate is no tax increase for unimpacted taxpayers. When I say unimpacted, an example would be, I think Bill Burns submitted, and 39 other taxpayers submitted requests for reduction of valuations due to Ian, and the county approved those. They provided around $20,000 in refunds out of this fiscal year. And that was the again, I'm not looking at the slide, but that was the major $20-30 million reduction in what we had expected as revenues for next fiscal year. So those of us that didn't submit or didn't apply for Ian relief, and those of us that won't be doing a value adjustment board reconsideration next year for this current year, those are the unimpacted taxpayers.
right, understand all that. I guess my question is, for last year, for the current year, 22-23, the millage rate was 2.817.
The millage rate last year that was approved by the board was 3.1, I believe. Yeah, I'm at page 10. If you go to that next slide, page 10 does show that the rollback rate for next fiscal year is 2.8007. The millage rate for this current fiscal year was 3.1. We approved 3.15 mills as the tentative rate for next fiscal year at the meeting on the 21st of July. And I've identified for you the 3.15 mills that we approved at the bottom line that we approved at keep saying last month's meeting, but the July meeting. You see that at 3.1 mills, we generated $940,000 in gross revenue before tax discounts, early payment discounts. And we approved tentatively 3.15 that went out on the trim notices 2 weeks ago. And you see that the revenue is roughly the same. The rollback rate would be no tax increase, and that would be roughly $100,000 decrease. As a reminder, the 3.15 mills that we approved was, I think, just over 12% tax increase at 3.15 mills.
So if everything is consistent, if there's no hurricane and no devaluation because of that, if there was no increase in value of the single house on this island, then the rollback rate would be the 3.1. Is that correct? For 24.
If there had not been a hurricane, the rollback rate would have been less than 3.1 because the property values before the hurricane losses were subtracted was around $330 million. That column that shows property values. So instead of going from 303 million to 330 million, which is what I projected back in November, instead we had a $4 million reduction from last year, but that was on top of another 25 or so $1 million in reduction just because of Ian.
Okay.
rollback rate is it's a calculation based on whatever the county tells us valuations are. And we have no control over that. It's just a math calculation. That's a good question. It doesn't mean that the millage rate, rollback rate is always going to be 3.1. As you see today, the rollback rate for next year would be 2.8007. It changes every year
Okay.
based on ups and downs of valuation changes. Usually, absent a hurricane, we typically see somewhere between a 3 to 10% or higher increase in annual valuation increases for two reasons. One is the Save Our Homes homestead limits of 3% for homesteaders, 10% for non-homesteaders. And then we also see new homes added to the tax roll. Both of those things together cause taxable valuations typically to go up. That did not happen after Ian, and it did not happen during the first 3 years of the Great Recession.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Question on page 10. Page 11. When I made my comments during the meeting looking at the state's TRIM portal and said that for us to do the maximum millage rate, we required a unanimous vote of all 5 commissioners. There was pushback and either disbelief or a wonder if that had changed this year. I don't know the answer to any of that. I just know that, as I pointed out, I think Duncan may have come behind me in the meeting to check that I knew how to read this. Bill Burns was concerned that we might need a legal opinion. Bill, did you talk to a lawyer about this?
No.
Any questions about what that language on the form says and the reason we could not approve it, the maximum millage rate of 3.75 after Mike voted no?
I believe we addressed that last week.
Okay. Next page, page 12. Again, as a reminder, the board is approving a bottom line number after we approve a specific millage rate, both at the 9th of September meeting and the final budget hearing somewhere in the last week of September. This is what the document looked like a year ago that 4 of the board members approved at the budget hearings. And you see that it is a total of all revenues. It does not show any specific detailed numbers on all of the different types of revenues. It groups most of them in miscellaneous and other sources. The only specific lines are in ad valorem. Again, we will finalize those numbers next month. And in special assessment, we finalized that number today. Any questions about what was approved last year? Hearing none, page 13. So this was my attempt to again explain that it doesn't matter what are additions, either for pay and benefits, capital, doing both, doing neither, different numbers. The only number that changes in the sources of funds sheet, part of what we have to publish in the TRIM notice, is the total source of funds in the revenues. Any questions about that? There are no differences in source of funds if you add additional spending or take spending out. Hearing none, page 14. Page 14 is on the spending side of what was approved last year. And that hot link that says click here to see it yourself takes you to the budget resolution the final budget resolution that was approved a year ago. And you can see that, again, it is a total of the groupings of personal services, operating expenses, capital debt outlay, debt services, and reserves. Next slide, page 15. No matter what our detailed spending piece is, the total uses of funds are exactly the same. What changes is the line that is called fund balances reserves ending. You spend more than you take in revenue, reserves go down. You spend less than you take in revenue, reserves go up. But the bottom line is that next month, this board will decide what the total revenues are, and the total revenues matches the bottom line sources of funds. The fund balances reserves ending is the balancing line, the adjustment line. Are there any questions from either the board or the public on this slide? Because this is a weird concept to wrap your head around.
No, I get it. I guess, the reserve, that fluctuates. I understand why you did that. That seems high compared to what we were just talking about with a reserve of 450,000. You got 699 then. Or the low water reporting is 519.
Yeah, if you go back to page 13, where it says fund balances reserves beginning, that was in the 438,712 that Renee's budget said we would end this current fiscal year at, plus a small adjustment that I made.
Got it.
The increase on page 15 assumed that number, assumed the 3.15 mils revenue, assumed 447,400 net for special assessment, assumed other miscellaneous revenues from donations, fund run, interest, and others, and did not include, because these slides were created before I got the number from the auditor, that based on their calculations, we will actually finish. We started the fiscal year last year, 10 months ago. We started that fiscal year with about $130,000 more than what Renee put in the budget.
Yeah, understand.
So
Okay,
no
thank
other
you.
questions about bottom line differences between uses of funds. The weird part to me in this whole process is the idea that reserves count as a use of funds and a source of funds. But conceptually, the way to think about it is it's just the balancing number. That's the way that we come to balance in a proposed budget. Page 16. Page 16, I don't believe this slide changed appreciably. There were some minor changes, such as on the left table where it says special assessments, the previous version had that set as 0 and had on the right side all of a good number of the special assessment costs were buried in the general fund revenues. Once we made the decision at the last meeting that we were going to do maximum special assessment, I readjusted those numbers. The second place that I made adjustments on the spending side was in operating expenses. We made the decision last month, instead of delaying till after the 1st of October, buying $23,000 worth of mission critical PPE, personal protective equipment. We agreed to authorizing the chief to place the order this fiscal year. And that $23,000, then I reduced that same amount from the PPE line, detail line in the proposed budget. Historically, the last chief budgeted somewhere around 15 or 20, I think, $1,000 for 4 sets of PPE, with an idea of replacing 4 sets every year, and over 10 years, the package life of PPE would continually replace everything as it then expired. Jesse, did I say that right?
You are correct.
Okay. So these numbers, other than those areas where the millage rate was set at 3.15 instead of 3.75, which was in the July slides, where the special assessment on the revenue side was set at 0, those adjustments have been made on the revenue side, and minor adjustments were made on the spending cost side before any commissioner adds. Based on those numbers, proposed spending, you see at the bottom, potentially raises our ending reserves $415,000 before capital is ID'd. This goes to the comment I think that Duncan made towards the beginning, is that the rollback rate, or a rate lower than the rollback rate, is likely to be, it is not a tax increase, and it would reduce this projected ending reserve number. The other change to this ending reserve number, again, is that these slides were created before the $130,000 that I was provided in the draft auditor's report for what our beginning reserve amount was 10 months ago, which then impacts what our starting point is this year and our projected ending point would be next year. Any questions about slide 16? Now, the reason that I have only subtotals instead of details, we can talk the details if you want, but I'm telling you again that the details aren't the important question for this board to decide next month. It is revenues and millage rate. Any questions from the board or the public on page 16? Next slide, page 17. This is my proposals, mine and Jesse's proposals for fiscal 2024 on the pay and benefits side. I proposed to Jesse, even though Jesse said he wasn't expecting it. He didn't say he didn't want it, but he said he wasn't expecting it, and I said we should be giving it, is roughly $6,240 as a retirement contribution based on those 2 shifts per week at $25 per hour. That equates to a $240 per pay period contribution to a new retirement account that the district, I'm proposing the district contributes. Jesse did not. Second thing that Jesse did propose, though, in lieu of any changes to his pay and benefits, was raising Tom Tracy's rate from what a deputy chief makes, which is $23.39 currently, to the same $25 per hour that he makes, that Jesse makes today, and he proposes to make next year. And the rest are detailed lines, calculations on proposed increases for division chiefs, officers, paramedics, and EMTs. As a reminder, I suggested to Jesse that we needed to increase the gap between EMTs and paramedics as an incentive for more of our paramedic qualified part-timers that are paramedics at their home districts, for them to agree to become credentialed, and we pay them more money on the paramedic side. I still believe that our best case, desired case, is for both of the two firefighter positions, as many of them to be paramedics as we can, since it's medical and paramedic services that are most important to our constituents, but also what we spend most of our firefighter labor at. Any questions about slide 17? Any arguments about the proposal for the pay increase, the hourly pay rates increases, or adding a retirement contribution for our new permanent chief?
I'm concerned about the amount of the increase for the regular EMTs, but I talked to Jesse about that, and he pretty much, seconded what you were saying regarding the paramedics being, there's an incentive there for the EMTs to become paramedics and encourage more paramedics to join the district. So that makes sense to me. I just thought a 37-cent raise was a little bit, insulting, but apparently it's not.
The reason that it's less dollar wise is the last, I believe, 2 fiscal years, maybe 3, but most definitely 2 fiscal years, every single part-time employee received a $1 raise. And so what happens is when it's not a percentage raise, but a fixed dollar raise, the pay differential becomes smaller and smaller percentage-wise between the 2, or the 4, in that case, 4 pay categories, because the pay categories we had were deputy chief or assistant chief. I keep getting the terms mixed up. Officers, paramedics, and EMTs. And so what happened is that that fixed $1 raise for the last at least 2 years equated to something over a 5% increase for the EMTs, close to a 5% increase for the paramedics, and a less than 5% increase for the officers and the chiefs. This it does 2 things. It creates a larger gap to incent new paramedics and new paramedic hires or conversions. And second, it reestablishes a pay gap between the 2 labor categories.
Let me just reiterate what you just said. In reality, most fire departments, you're a firefighter, EMT, and you get paid an incentive to be a paramedic. So the incentive base is anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 a year. You don't change your pay rate at departments, you get an incentive. So here it's a little different. So doing it this way, I think is ideally the best way to do it, because you'll get $2.50 to $3 an hour difference between EMT and paramedic. We currently have 3 to 5 guys that are right now in medic school. So once they get credentialed and state certified, they'll be credentialed out here as well. So they'll go from that EMT pay to paramedic pay as well. So it definitely shows an incentive.
Jesse, I agree with everything you just said.
Yeah.
But my question is, wouldn't the incentive come from their full-time jobs?
Comes from
As
both.
opposed to the part-time job out here? I mean, wouldn't their full-time job be the one to incentivize them to become paramedics?
Well, yeah.
Bill, it comes from both.
Yeah, they get incentivized. If you think about it, you're making whatever $18 and change here, but if you become a paramedic at your regular job, you're going to get an $8 to $15,000 raise. Plus, you're going to get a $3 an hour raise here. So it's incentivized from both places.
If they agree to credential out here. JT said at the meeting 5 or 6 months ago that most of, especially the newer paramedics that were credentialed at their home districts, were not willing to be the sole paramedic on shift, And second,
been-
because of that, they
rectified.
did not want to credential as a paramedic out there.
That's been rectified
And how did you rectify that?
by communicating with Dr. Augustine as well as their home departments. If they work in their home department, Dr. Augustine is willing to take a letterhead written on, me writing a letter on letterhead saying they are a credentialed medic in town at their home department. They don't have to sit and get mega code and do what Dr. Augustine will take that and it just goes in their file and they're good to go.
And you've already done that with several.
Three guys already.
So
Yeah.
basically just reciprocity.
It's a very simplified reciprocity.
So the bottom line from this slide is that this is a $65,000 spending reduction from what was approved in the budget a year ago. To Mike's point, that's because we're getting a free ride with Jesse on not having to pay for $27,000 roughly in health insurance. And Jason was getting somewhere around 12,000, I think, in retirement. Jesse, I've proposed half of that based on the number of hours that he's working. So no questions on page 17. We'll go to page 18. Again, this is just a recap of everything I said. I don't think I need to read or belabor this point. I believe my takeaways from this so far is, as Mike said, the second major bullet, we chose a full-time permanent fire chief at this meeting. And we still agree that we will finalize a capital budget proposal, or the chief and his staff will, during October, November, December, funded by either budget amendment or with funding out of reserves, sale proceeds, insurance, FEMA donations, EIO. Are those takeaways correct?
Yeah.
Okay, slide 19. My recommendations for the 9th of September budget hearing. I believe that I agree with what Duncan said, that we should not be doing a tax increase on the ad valorem side in addition to full special assessment taxes that we have on the order of $150,000 to $200,000 in less spending this next fiscal year than we had in last fiscal year and this fiscal year, because we're not buying a second fire truck yet. We're not building a second garage yet. And the $65,000 I said in the reductions for paying benefits. My personal preference is when you look at the amount of reserves that it generates, my personal feeling is that we should do a tax increase, and my proposal is that we set on the 9th of September we would set the millage rate at 2.5 mils. I did give you in this slide what the rollback rate would generate in the way of additional reserves. This doesn't.
And tax decrease, because you said increase, just so you know.
Thank you. 2.5 mils is a 10.7% tax decrease.
Yes,
Rollback
right.
rate is no tax decrease or increase. And what we approved at 3.15 at the last meeting is roughly, I don't have the number in front of me, but 12.5%, I think, is what it was as a tax increase. Now, the benefit of choosing one of these two options for the 9th of September meeting, and me having an idea where there's sense of the board, is that if there is no tax increase, it reduces the amount of ad cost we have for the trim notice for the final budget hearing. Last year or the year before, we spent roughly $2,500 just for the two trim advertisements. And I sat through an hour and a half presentation last week with the Department of Revenue. The law requires a quarter-page ad in the news press if we have a tax increase. And it has no size minimum if there is a tax decrease or no tax increase at all.
So, Bill, what I would like, and I don't know if you have this, or maybe if you could put it on the agenda for tonight, is a look at the 24-25 revenue forecast. You know,
That doesn't exist. I kind of got screwed in November when I made my 10% estimate. I gave you all the reasons for the 10% estimate. It turned out before they took away the Ian stuff, we actually had a 12% increase in overall values. And then we lost the 10% that I presumed plus $5 million. So it doesn't exist, but one of the previous slides that I've generated for you, I think it's, hang on a minute. It gives a number, moment. In the document that I gave you all and was posted on the website in July, I gave you what I decided I would project as a 3% taxable valuation increase going from 24 to 25. That to me is exceedingly low, just because 3% is the maximum that roughly 75 property owners who homestead, that's what their limit is. All of the rest of us that don't homestead, our limit on an annual increase is 10% in valuations. And I would presume that some, if not all, of the money that we lost in E and D valuations as repairs and renovations are done, as new construction comes on the tax roll, that we'll see an increase from that as well. But the bottom line in overall numbers hasn't changed. I'll revalidate that in the September presentation. But
Right, so-
I assumed we would go from roughly 300 million this year to 310 million for fiscal 25.
And the reason I bring this up is because, you know, I get what you're saying is that at the rollback rate, certainly at the 3.1 rate that we set as the ceiling at the last meeting, we're growing the reserves, right? My
Yes.
question is if we look at the next time we do this time next year when we're looking at the budget, there's no option of the special assessment, and the question becomes, you know, what would the revenues look like there, and could it help us, as you know, everyone's expecting valuations to rise, the percentage is very subjective, but if we have a larger reserve, then that might help feather in our operations and as you know, for another year or two until we get to the valuations and the number of homes increase and the valuations increase and to fill that void.
So I have given you those numbers in past, I believe it was in the memo that I did for July that I didn't update for this meeting. But I will make sure that we have that number in and that table in the next presentation. What I assumed was a 3% increase in taxable revenues on the ad valorem side at max millage rate, because if I will tell you, there is, unless spending goes below even what I've proposed and Jesse's proposed for this year minus capital, unless spending goes down next year, fiscal 25, most definitely, the 5 people sitting at the table will have to all vote for the max millage rate. Otherwise, revenues will not match spending. And if revenues don't match spending and our revenues are lower than spending, then you're absolutely correct.
So I think we have next
goes
week
down.
before we finalize the military.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll give you a real answer on the 9th.
Thank you.
My question is, I heard Duncan say 2.5 mils was where he was leaning to. I'm telling you, I'm leaning to 2.5. I need to know whether I'm changing the number in the next budget presentation from 3.15 mils to some different number.
The
Is
reason
there
why,
a third person that would agree to think about, based on the numbers, a reduction in the millage rate so that there's no tax increase?
the reason why I think I would go to the 2.5 with the 447, there's a couple of reasons. One of which, if we start lowering the special assessment side, it becomes an accounting nightmare to reallocate the counts, and I like the idea of keeping the assessment at the 447 and moving the millage rate up or down accordingly, because that's going to require a lot of effort to redo the accounting. I mean, do you agree with that, Bill?
Yeah, it's not so much that as we've lost 2.5 weeks. The deadline before the hurricane would have been the 1st of September for us to have our resolution passed and the tax assessment, special assessment roll in the hands of the tax collector. We're obviously not going to meet that. But between the hurricane and Labor Day on Monday, I spoke with Russ Wire. He said he could probably reduce the special assessment numbers, but my concern then would be they would be lower, but they would not, we would potentially impact our required notice to taxpayers on what is posted on the website today. It's been posted on the website for 2 weeks, what each property owner pays. So at this point, it's technically feasible. He said he can make any adjustments we want in the bottom line number for the special assessment, and he can fix it. I believe that's bringing unnecessary complexity. I would rather do the reduction on the millage side.
So do we have consensus amongst the board members that 447, 400, is that where the other board members are leaning towards? That's where I'm leaning towards.
Well, I thought that was already a done deal at the last.
Yeah, we voted on it last month.
We voted on it. So
It's not a done deal until we do the second resolution, or the first resolution, the next topic. But I believe we should consider it a done deal. And that's my recommendation.
If I may, Duncan, can I give you my opinion on that, please?
Yeah, please.
I agree that we have to go with the 447 special assessment number. But I have a different opinion on lowering the millage rate to 2.5 or the rollback rate of 2.8007. And I'm not sure this is the right time to maybe flesh out all the arguments there. But I think that we face a lot of uncertainty in the next year, and reducing the millage rate, I think, is likely to be problematic. I think this is the year that we should go in with a larger than expected reserve. We can always back that out over the next few years through millage rate. If the revenue comes through from insurance claims or FEMA, or if some of the potential expenses with the building damage and the equipment damage and the lawsuits, et cetera, do not come through, we have the opportunity over time to do that. But I would not be a proponent of reducing the millage rate to 2.5 or 2.8.
So Mike, Duncan, if I may,
Go ahead.
we are not making a decision today. That decision on what those rates are going into the final budget hearing happens on the 9th. My question is, do we think we've got a third person that would consider reducing that millage rate and reducing the $400 and some $1,000 increase in reserves that the current millage rate would generate? And all that means
That's
is,
right. That's why
is that I would
I'm
create,
not sure it's the right time to go into it, but
Yeah.
that is my position.
Yeah.
That we should stick with the 447 and have additional debate over the millage rate.
yeah, I got that. The only thing that I need to know is next is the 9th of September tentative budget meeting going to give you numbers and a budget proposal at 3.15, which is the documents that are in front of you, 2.5, 2.8007, or some other number? Is there a third person that would consider a reduction? Failing that, then I won't be making any changes to the budget numbers.
Well, I think what you're asking is who's voting for an increase and who's voting for a decrease. You want to know so you can plan accordingly for your paperwork, correct?
I need for me to create an updated budget presentation different from the ones that you've got. If we're going to talk about a reduction in revenue assumed on the millage rate side, because we're all assuming right now until we vote in a few minutes or a few hours on the special assessment roll, I assume that the special assessment roll is 447,400 net. And so at 447,400 net, the increase in reserve is somewhere in the vicinity of $400,000 and represents a 12.5% tax increase. I believe that's excessive.
Fine, so I believe that what we'll discuss on the 9th will be a millage rate somewhere between 3.1 and 2.5. And then for the purpose of modeling, I think if you hit those 3 points, you know, the 3.1, the 2.8, and the 2.5, I think that would be probably sufficient for us to have a discussion and set the tentative millage rate.
So I think that means, Dan, if I'm hearing you correctly, is there was I gave the board a millage rate and special assessment options that I think Duncan spoke about a long time ago. It is that slide that you want me to insert into the 9th of September presentation.
I believe
Jeff, you said my answer is yes.
That's the short answer to yes. I think it's
Duncan, you're not pulling a Dianne Feinstein on him, are you?
I think it's page 15.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, no,
the slide I'm talking about is not included in the budget presentation for today. It was to give you an idea of what could be in the budget presentation next week. And it is just next Saturday. And that has a column for the rollback millage rate, a special assessment rate of a millage rate of 2.25 at maximum special assessment, a 2.5 millage rate at maximum assessment. I will eliminate the lower special assessment with max millage rate because that's, I'm assuming, won't be on the table next week because we will approve the 447,400 today on the special assessment tax roll. So this is the slide then, and the only change, the major change that I'll be making to the slide deck. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
Agreed.
I have what I need then for that. And I think I had another question, moment.
Yeah.
The next question is, do we schedule the second budget hearing on the 23rd of September or the 30th of September? There has to be a minimum of roughly 10 to 14 days between the meetings. And it has to be before the 30th of September, absent another executive order caused by hurricane or other disaster.
So I will not be available on the 23rd of September, but that if we still have a quorum in the room, I assume the vice chair would run the meeting. But I am available on the 30th, pending there's no travel delays or whatnot. I should be back on the 28th. And I'm not sure if any other people have conflict on either of the conflicts on those days.
For me, I will definitely be on the island for the 9th meeting, staying through the evening of the 24th of September, flying back to North Carolina, or yeah, the airport in North Carolina, flying back up north on the 25th. I'm available, so I'll be in the room as part of a in the room quorum on the 23rd. I'll be on Zoom on the 30th.
And I will be on Zoom on the 23rd if it turns out it's the 23rd.
I'm available both days, but I'll just remind everybody that for purposes of budget hearings, if you are not in the room, you can't vote.
That's not accurate.
That is accurate. And it happened with Mike last year. He was able to participate, but not able to vote. Of course, we have a new attorney now, so she may have a different opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, here's my schedule. I'm out of the country on the 23rd. I think I could attend by Zoom that day. Or the 30th, I would be, I think, available by Zoom or in person.
Dan, your availability?
Good either day.
So I would like to then, if it sounds like Duncan and I have the hard issue, well, actually Duncan, I and Michael have a hard issue. Duncan and Michael would be in the room on the 30th. I would be on Zoom. And if it's the 23rd, Michael and Duncan would be on Zoom. Did I get that right?
I think correct. I think the 30th sounds like the right thing.
So just be aware that if there's any slippage and it's not caused by a governor's executive order, we will not, I think without absent a resolution, I think they revert to rollback rate. If we don't vote on a resolution for a quorum, with a quorum in the room. So.
All right, so can someone make a motion then to vote on the proposed date here? And then I will send an email immediately today during the meeting to Mooney asking for her to make sure it's published in the news press.
You're going to have to authorize it's not today that you send that note. It is not today that you send the note. Because we won't have voted on a millage rate until the 9th of September. We have 5 days, or no, I think it's 3 days after we vote on the first budget hearing millage rate for me to provide the source of funds and use of funds tables to our attorney for that to be the notice that goes in the news press.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll target the 30th, but we won't finalize that until the 9th. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
So for today's purposes,
For today's purpose, I don't need to answer to that question. We have to decide at the next meeting on a millage rate and 23 or 30 September for the final budget hearing.
Okay,
all right, any questions for Commissioner Fry?
yeah.
So
pick up the pace.
5B, Resolution 2023-004, Special Assessment Role and Methodology. Commissioner Fry.
So you've got posted on the website on the 15th of August was the special assessment role created by our real estate economist for the final year of the existing special assessment. No major changes were proposed either in the methodology. No changes were made in the 447,400 or the net or the gross 466,066, I think. So no changes in methodology or the total dollar figure. What changes there are would be, I think, slight reductions in everybody's assessment based on new properties that came on board. Even Ian impacted properties that might have a 100,000, a reduction in their value from, say, 800,000 to 100,000, which occurred on some of the properties. They still pay the full special assessment because it's not based on valuation, but based on square footage of the land and square footage of the improvements. So any questions about the tax roll that you'll have gone through? That's 2 weeks.
No. All right. So with the resolution today, for today's purpose, we don't have to do anything, correct?
Yep, you have to read, according to Bill, every single word in that
The
4 or 5
resolution.
page resolution.
Okay.
And then
here
we'll
we go.
vote. And then we get a motion and a voice vote.
Okay, resolution number 2023-004, a resolution of the Fire Board of the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District, Lee County, Florida, establishing and improving the amount of the fire services at non-ad valorem assessment for year 10, fiscal year 2023-2024, confirming, approving, and adopting the final assessment roll, directing the fire chief or designee to certify the assessment roll and deliver same to the Lee County property appraiser and Lee County tax collector, and providing an effective date. Whereas Upper Captiva Fire and Rescue Protection Service District, Lee County, Florida is an independent fire control district under chapters 189 and 191 Florida statutes and chapter 2000-33 laws of Florida. And whereas the district has previously adopted a fire services non-ad valorem special assessment, the assessment for no more than 10 years against all qualified real property within the assessment area, which is
I'm sorry, I fell asleep. Where are you at?
sorry, I'm not familiar with word condominiums with North Captiva Island, Lee County, Florida, as described in Exhibit A attached, and which was approved on July 8, 2014 in a referendum of the qualified electors pursuant to resolutions numbers 14-01 and 14-03. And whereas due to the time of the year in the referendum, the first year's assessment could not be collected under the uniform method of levy, collection, and enforcement of non-ad valorem special assessments, known as the uniform method, specified in sections 191.3632 Florida statutes. And whereas the district, after due public notice and public hearing, adopted a resolution electing to use the uniform method, resolution 14-04 for the 2015 tax year, 2014 to 2015 fiscal year, and for subsequent years. And whereas the district published a notice of the public meeting and hearing in the Fort Myers News Press, and whereas the fire board has considered the updated fiscal year 2023-2024 fire district operational plan and assessment methodology report and the draft preliminary assessment rule, has heard and considered the input of the public prior to taking action at the public hearing on the September 2nd, 2023, and has made any necessary corrections to the assessment rule. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the fire board of the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District, Lee County, Florida, as follows. Section 1, authority, this resolution of the fire board of the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District, the district, and independent fire control district under chapters 189 and 191. Florida statutes, chapter 2000-33, laws of Florida districts charter, located in Lee County, Florida, is adopted pursuant to section 197.3632, Florida statutes and other applicable provisions of the law. Section 2, findings. The fire board of the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District, the fire board has previously stated its intention to use the uniform method for the levies, collection, and enforcement of non-ad valorem assessments, and specifically the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District Fire Services non-ad valorem special assessment and assessment for more than 1 year, but not exceeding 10 years, with the area comprising the assessment area established by District Resolution numbers 14-01 and 14-03 as authorized by section 197.3632 Florida statutes. Commencing in November 2015, this will allow such assessments to be collected annually and to be placed on the real property tax bills in the same manner as provided for collection of ad valorem taxes. B, the assessment area is the same as the district's boundary, which is all of North Captiva Island, Lee County, Florida, as more fully described in Exhibit A, attached here to and incorporated herein. C, the assessment was duly adopted by Fire Board on March 15, 2014, and then approved by the voters in a mail ballot referendum election on July 8, 2014. D, the preliminary assessment resolution, resolution 14-01, and the final assessment resolution, resolution 14-03, contemplated the adoption of the uniform method provisions for levy, collection, and enforcement as soon as feasible. The district has directly invoiced and is collecting the first year assessment since voter approval was too late for adoption under section 197.3632 Florida statute for the 2014 year. E, the fire board held a duly advertised public hearing on December 20th, 2014 for the purpose of taking public input and considering the adoption of resolution number 14-04 stating the district's intent to use the uniform method. F, the district has entered into the required agreements with the Lee County property appraiser and the Lee County tax collector. G, the district has published a legal notice of public meeting and hearing, which was held on September 2nd for the board to take staff and public input to determine the amount of the total assessment needed to consider the updated fire district operational plan and assessment methodology report and to approve and confirm the assessment role. Section 3, uniform method of collecting non-ad valorem assessments. A, the fire board of the district hereby determines that the amount of $447,400 net after the 4% maximum early payment discount is needed to fund fire services non-ad valorem special assessment needs for year 10, tax year 2023, fiscal year 2023-2024. Reconfirms the assessment as set out in resolutions 14-01 and 14-3 as updated in the resolution. It confirms that the amounts assessed are necessary for the provision of such services, confirms the assessment methodology as set out in the updated Upper Captiva Fire District operational plan and assessment methodology report, and reconfirms that the assessment conveys a special benefit to the real property located in the assessment area in the amounts indicated in the assessment roll. 3, adopts, confirms, certifies, and levies the non-ad valorem assessment against real property and assessment area as set forth in the assessment roll, a copy which is attached here too as Exhibit B and incorporated herein. Said assessment roll also being adopted hereby. 4, request that the Lee County Property Appraiser and Lee County Tax Collector include this assessment in the uniform method system under Chapter 197 and Section 197-3632 Florida statute. Section 4, transmittal. Upon adoption, the district fire chief or its designee is hereby directed to certify and deliver a copy of the resolution and the certified assessment roll to the Lee County Property Appraiser and Lee County Tax Collector by September 4th, 2023. Section 5, construction effective date. The resolution shall be liberally construed to affect the purposes hereof and shall become available immediately upon adoption. So I guess this is where, at this point, we'd need a motion. The foregoing resolution was offered by Commissioner
So moved.
Phillips, who moved the resolution's adoption. The motion was seconded by Commissioner Burns. And upon being put to a vote, the vote was as follows. Commissioner Rosen, yes. Commissioner Hammond,
Yes.
Commissioner Fry,
You're muted, Bill.
You're muted, Bill.
Thumbs up.
Yes,
thank you.
I fell asleep.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Burns.
Yes.
All right. Passed and adopted in open and regular session of the Fire Board of Upper Captiva Fire Protection and the Rescue Service District, Florida, this second day of September 2023.
That's all.
Thank God.
Well done.
All right. Your signature here, man.
Geez, sorry. I just took out the date now.
Oh. You massage over there?
All right. I think we're moving on to.
Read.
Oh, you do.
Unless you guys read it.
We're not jumping that far.
This is,
I don't know.
Well, we're going to reoccurring business now to. Oh, excuse me, C and D. Yes, my bad. I wrote it on the side here. Moving on to the Rum Road Collective, Commissioner Burns, you brought that to today's meeting and just want to.
Touch on it very briefly. There's some of us receive emails, some of us have received text or personal conversations. Some have received nothing. But there is a proposal from some islanders right now for extensive commercial development on Rum Road, opposite the Island Club's tennis court area and septic area. And they plan on holding a public forum on October 7th for the public to show up and receive a presentation as to what's going on, to ask questions, and I assume do like Festivus and have the area grievances. So I just want to let everybody know at this point that it exists. It will affect the fire district in some way if it goes through as is. Not just with increased tax revenue, but with more commercial properties, we may have to discuss staffing, we may have to discuss new additional apparatus, additional coverage areas. So these are things that could affect us down the road. The other thing I wanted to bring up today is that there are 3 of us, actually almost right here, that are in the notice area. And whether you're in favor, against, or could care less, I'm just not sure what we are allowed to do or say if we are in favor or opposed, as far as making statements either at their hearings or here, or going on Facebook and blowing things up, as some will do. But I ask that perhaps Duncan can reach out to the attorney and get something from her in writing as to what we are allowed to the level of participation that we should. It's always been the position of the district overall that we don't take a position other than to make sure that all of the requirements of the applicable building and fire codes are met. And as long as, as long as those things are met, this goes back to Chief Pepper. That as long as all the requirements are met, the fire chief and the district are fine with that. If they're not met, then they, the plans need to be amended so that they are.
And I agree with you. I mean, I think that it should be this board's view that we do not weigh for or against it. But I agree that we do need to determine whether or not, since the three of us are in that zone, we have to be careful. And we have to ask.
I mean, do we have, if you stand up at a public meeting, you have to issue a disclaimer. By the way, I'm a commissioner, but I'm speaking as a private citizen.
But I do not think the board should weigh one way or another on this matter or any other development matters.
Duncan, could I make a statement, please?
Go ahead, Kerry.
Okay. First of all, I think that was a good point, Bill, you bringing that up. But I believe that if the board's going to do anything whatsoever, every single board member needs to make a disclosure to the residents here on the island about whether they have any financial support that they're providing or getting, or any other kinds of support, such as advice, or anything else that any of the board members or their families have with respect to this Rum Road Collective. Because if they do, then I think they have to recuse themselves from anything that takes place or requires any action on the part of the board. And I think this is extremely important, particularly in this case where you guys are a public organization and there are conflict of interest rules that apply to board members and public organizations. Thank you.
I mean, I think we could probably, state that now. I mean, I have zero involvement with the collective project financially or any other in any other capacity.
No, I have no affiliation with them. But I guess before I pass the baton, I think that at this point, we don't think we'll get a review, but we don't think that this board will pass any resolution or make any, official comment on the development. If we do end up, for whatever reason, we decide to make our position official, if we vote on something and it's official, then I think we need to not just verbally state our neutrality or lack thereof. It needs to be written down so that we can, put it in the record and it's really official. Okay. Because I think that is an important point that Terry brings up.
I have no stake financially in this whatsoever. Again, I am in notice zone. However, as everybody will recall, I've been working with FGCU for the past few years, putting together a history of Upper Captiva Island, which includes the fire district. It started just pre-COVID, slowed down considerably during COVID. Ian hit the pause button for several months. Where new semester started, we're getting underway again. We're going to continue with the project. During COVID, I picked up the phone and called Steve Ward, who is the gentleman who wants to put together the community center. I made him aware of the project and asked him if he would be interested in setting aside an area of that building for the history of Upper Captiva. And I alluded to several old photographs we come up with and blueprints and aerial photographs and charts, newspaper articles. And he said he thought it was a good idea. And that was the last time we spoke about it. But in looking at his proposal, I see that he's talking about that in there. So it will not impact me in any way financially. My only involvement would be if it comes to fruition and he gets permission to do that building, would be putting him with the people at FGCU to coordinate what's gonna go there and when they would donate it, or whether there's gonna be, some way to access the FGCU records through the building. I mean, it's just, I'm the guy doing the history. After that, whatever happens, happens. But again, we'll have no financial stake in it whatsoever, either anybody in the collective or FGCU.
Okay. Bill Fry?
I think most of what Bill said, I agree with. This is not in the purview of the fire district board. In past proposed development zoning variance changes were in the purview of the authority having jurisdiction. And as of a couple of hours ago, that officially is our permanent fire chief, Jesse Cottrell. And there, as far as I know, there are should be no future requirements for us to discuss it as a board, because we don't tell the fire chief whether a building or a proposed building can pass fire regulations or not. To answer Carrie's, so I don't believe that there's a requirement for and spending money with our attorney to ask that question, because the bottom line is this board has no oversight or preview of any zoning decision. It is the authority having jurisdiction that submits a document to the county building and permits or zoning people or whichever EIO office has responsibility for. Because the three of you are directly impacted, I guess you're within the distance from the proposed rezoning. It would seem like then that if in fact this board were to take an action, all three would have to recuse. To respond to Carrie's question, as with everybody else, I have no financial advisory or any other connection to the Rum Road rezoning effort. Like I think probably everybody else, I know Steve Ward, Tom Harner, and Swin Swinford.
Michael, do you have
You have
anything to add?
you have no connection with any of those people financially?
I have no
I have
connection.
no,
I have
Oh,
no
I'm sorry.
connection with the project.
All right, Michael?
yeah, I don't have any financial connection with the development. I'm not sure why we're doing this. I don't know that this is really necessary to be making these declarations, but I have no financial interest in the development. My wife served on the conservation board with Swin Swinford. I know there's been some alleged crossover between the two. So I'll disclose that and leave it at that.
All right. Yeah, I don't know if those are old chats.
No, there's only one there initially.
Does anyone else?
I'd like to add, based on what Mike just said about his wife, Swin and I have a partnership on a property in Flamingo Bay,
Thank you.
but no connection to the project.
Okay. So do we have any questions from anyone in the audience on Zoom? Jesse, do you want to discuss this at all, or are you just?
Nope.
Okay. All right.
I have
moving
a
on.
question. I have
Go
a
ahead.
question. Thanks. So if the proposed project moves forward, they are proposing a three-story on stilts building of 12,000 square feet, which is quite a large structure. Wondering if the fire department, and a total of 22,000 square feet in buildings, is that going to be a challenge for our fire department to put out a fire if it were to start there?
So anything that catches fire out here is a problem, or could be a potential problem. But depending on the contents, depending on combustible materials inside of it, I don't know what's in it. I don't know what they're housing in it, so it's tough to answer, but anything that catches fire out here is always gonna be an issue.
Mm-hmm. So
And
they are
Sarah,
proposing a hotel.
Sarah, I don't recall, but I seem to remember from almost a decade ago now, that John Thane's house at the end of Panama Shell is something like 21,000 square feet. And
No, that's not correct, Bill.
no, not
John
not
Thane's
under,
house is 6,000 square feet. It's under
Plus-
6. So
plus
this is two
$14,000
of Thane's
plus-
houses.
plus
This is two
14,000.
of Thane's houses. Yeah, on one lot, on one of the lots. The proposal is for essentially 2 of John Thane's houses, plus an additional story on just one of these lots. That's a massive structure, probably the largest structure on our island.
I'll say it again, it's the authority having jurisdiction that makes those decisions, not this board. It's not in our purview. I think we
No.
should move on.
I agree, Bill, but no, I think it's a fair question whether or not the fire department, from my knowledge, does not have a ladder truck. Would it be possible to fight that size of building and that height? I think that's a fair question. And I know a lot of the islanders are asking that question.
Fair question, and I believe, and I'd have to ask a fire marshal that the code for that, it would have to be sprinklered, I would think, depending on the size of it, the height of it. So that comes in play as well. Or however, again, any structure out here is going to be difficult just because we have 4 personnel. And with what we have, to make it to the structure. Every other fire department has multiple units showing up and multiple people, but I understand your concern. I don't believe we have the authority. I'll look into it, that we could stop a structure being built if it gets passed by the county, and then it gets passed. But they have to meet all fire code stuff, so that would obviously benefit them and benefit us.
Thank you, Jesse.
So for example, put yourself on Captiva with the South Seas Island Resort.
Mhm.
Some of those buildings are what, 4, 5, 6.
And they have
floors
4
tall.
people that respond.
Does that require, well, yes, they have they're attached by the bridge, and it's an easier problem, but do they have to have do they have equipment, or do they have any special equipment in order to be able to fight a fire in those buildings or rescue people?
Yeah, because there's an FTC attached. So essentially what you're gonna do is you're gonna tie into the FTC, which allows water to go to whatever floor it is that fire's on, and you're gonna pump it there. If the whole structure's on fire, obviously that's a whole different ballgame. You're gonna have multiple units, you're gonna have Sanibel show up, you're gonna have Iona show up.
Right.
So yes, any structure out here, it doesn't matter the size, in my opinion, is always going to be, even some of these 2-story, 3-story houses, I mean, they're elevated structures. And
Ways up there.
yeah, they're all going to be, it's always gonna be a difficult fight.
So the parks, from our perspective, we don't have to go out and buy you a longer ladder.
I don't believe so.
Grappling hook, so you can back any way up
Exactly.
there. So.
Yeah, I don't believe so. And again, when it's all said and done, they would have to meet the fire code standard, whatever that is for out here or that particular building.
And just to reiterate, this is gonna be a very long process.
Yeah, I don't think it's.
My only purpose to bring it up was to bring it to everybody's attention and find out what we need to do if we need to express our opinion. And you have a question out there, sir.
Go ahead.
I have a question about if they have a hotel on the 4th floor and they have a fire on the floor below, is there any way to save those people that are trapped on the floor above with our equipment? Right now,
They could jump into my pool.
We have ladders, we can throw ladders and get somebody down.
50-foot ladder,
Well, it would be 50 foot, second floor is not 50 foot, it's only.
4th floor.
Oh, you're saying people above, everybody's gotta get to the stairwells and get down.
What if the stairwells happen to be blocked or,
Okay, there's,
what
we can play the
if
what if, we can play the what if game on everything.
Well,
I agree with you.
worst case scenario.
I know, just like if there's a boat that gets pushed off and catches fire, I hope that person gets in the water. You know, swims away from their boat, you know, as it stands now.
Right now, we have no
This,
physical means to.
no, we do not have a ladder truck. The ladder truck in Benita, that's 115 feet, we can't get anybody from the fourth floor either. It's about the third floor you're gonna get to, because the way you gotta position the ladder. You lose about 25, 30 feet right off the rip. So anything above third floor, you're going up and getting them down anyways. Even with the, you know, a ladder truck. So that's part of the, you know, that's the same thing they did for the towers. They went up in the stairwells and get people down. Same deal. It's what you would go through.
And I have one more question. If this proposed project goes through and the hotel goes through, how does that affect our ISO rating? And will we have to have more staff, more fire department staff to keep our ISO rating? How will that affect it?
I would have to look into that and get back to you. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, thank you, Jesse.
Sarah, to clarify, the Thane House is 17,112 square feet in gross square footage, including all of the levels and the areas under air conditioning and under, not under air conditioning, like pool and deck areas. That's on page 22 of the special assessment roll we just approved. So I think I said 20,000 square feet, and I was obviously wrong. It was 17,100.
And my information that I'm looking at shows under 6,000. So
That's just the
I'll
house
have to
under-
research that. Is I think both of us need to research.
Well, if we've approved a special assessment roll, it's incorrect. It brings the whole
Yeah,
special
but-
assessment into question. My point is that you're probably looking at the square footage under air conditioning for the house and not the total square footage of the building.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the Zoom group? Nope. All right, moving on to sunshine laws, potential violation that the board committed. Go ahead, Bill Burns.
And to be clear, there's no finger pointing here. There's nothing that, you know, saying anybody dropped the ball by any means. But when it was brought to my attention that we had failed to publish the renotice of the meeting from August 16th to the 30th to the 23rd. And I looked it up and found that to be correct. I brought it to your attention.
Yep.
And it got rescheduled to the 30th, and then Idalia pushed it to today.
Yep.
But in going back through the records, because I had to check, you know, with the news press directly to find this out, I discovered that there were a few other ones where we had not published a notice. Okay, and specifically, we had published a notice in February of 2023 for special meetings at various dates in late February and March to discuss our ongoing chief issues. And did the same thing in March for special meetings at the end of March and April for the same reasons, to discuss the ongoing chief issues. But then we didn't publish any notices for a special meeting to be held on June 2nd, June 8th, June 9th, June 23rd, or July 14th.
One notice.
Right.
Correct.
Now,
So that would be one notice that would encompass all of those dates.
correct, which is what we were doing to avoid having to do it every week.
Right.
So the meeting on the 2nd, I believe, was canceled, as were the meetings on the 23rd, July 4th, and July 14th. So no harm, no foul there. But on June 9th, we held a meeting and it wasn't published. So therefore, technically, anybody who was at that meeting was discussing public business outside of a properly noticed hearing. I haven't turned nobody in.
Right.
I'm gonna pick up the phone, but I'm just letting you know. And also the meeting on June 8th, which was the special meeting that was held with Lee County Commissioner Wayne, was not noticed. Now, he's okay because he was a guest.
Right.
But, and my recollection is that there wasn't much or even any fire department business discussed at that meeting, but it was advertised as a joint meeting with the fire district. So technically, that would be another violation, but also I haven't been able to find any minutes from that meeting, so I can't say whether or not we discussed any minutes.
So I think technically, you are correct. What I've learned, I take responsibility for, those 2 notices, that you mentioned. I did, speak, with Maggie Mooney about this, and, you know, I will put everything in writing versus having miscommunications where I notify them of meetings. And she, on the last one, she did say, hey, you did tell me, but so I'll make sure it's in writing. And I agree with you, that there were potential violations there, not intentionally, but there were potential violations. I also did talk to Maggie Mooney, and she was kind enough to, regarding some of the other correspondence amongst board members being copied in certain situations, she said she'd be willing to give us a 1-hour presentation free of charge regarding sunshine laws. And I said, well, it's free of charge. I think it would be a good exercise for the board. So it's a board decision. We have to all agree to that, of course, for her to do it. But I said, well, I'd welcome that.
I don't think it's a bad idea. Let's get through the budget first.
Correct. Let's get through the budget. But I do take responsibility for that. Having said that, looking at the process, the news press, it's really funny because I try to find the notices online and you have to pay to find them. So what kind of notification is this really, when we have access to our Facebook groups and our email chains of subscribers and also other ways in the community to post on the island? It's actually a lot more effective in our specific case, but the laws are the laws, and I take responsibility.
Perhaps someday somebody will lobby our people up in Tallahassee to make the laws something equivalent to this current century.
Correct. All right, moving on to.
Hey, Duncan. Hey, wait a minute, Duncan.
Go ahead, Carrie. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
At the beginning of this meeting, Michael read from a document that Bill Fry supposedly sent to him. And they're 2 commissioners. So if they are communicating on fire department issues, my understanding of the Sunshine Act is that information has to be made public. And I would ask that whatever communication that was that Michael was reading from be released to all the citizens here on the island, since to the extent that they're discussing any board issues.
So I did ask the attorney about that specific email because I had other board members, forward it to me. And I think I might have been copied. I have to look at the record there, but I did ask Maggie Mooney, and she said there was no sunshine law that was violated. She said what would be the violation is to respond to that, to Commissioner Fry in that case.
Well, we don't know.
Technically, Carrie, it was probably a sunshine violation for it to be forwarded and discussed amongst any commissioners. But I have no issue at all of having it posted or you to make a public records request. I did send it from my personal email account, and I believe I sent it to Mike's personal email account. And I stand by the message.
But if the communications relate to the activities of the board, it seems like
there was no
made public.
The sunshine law says that as long as the communication is one direction without a response back, there's no violation.
And that is basically what Ms. Mooney confirmed.
And is that the case here? It was a single email from one person to another, or were there responses?
I never received a response.
And
I specifically said I did not want to see a response.
I think we can continue this dialogue when we have the 1 hour free meeting with regarding the sunshine laws with Maggie Mooney. Does that sound fair? Okay, perfect. Moving on to 6A, Martin and Dubrowski lawsuits.
No, you missed my request for a budget amendment resolution.
Yes, that's correct. Go ahead.
So all of you received the, after we've delayed the meeting, had delayed the meeting so many times. I went ahead and created a budget resolution amendment to deal with some of the base numbers that I need to have updated, like the ending reserve for last year, beginning reserve this year. And that then impacts the ending reserve for this year. I also told you all that I had proposed to move around $8,000 worth of prior budget lines that were buried in 4 or 5 different expense categories by the last bookkeeper for anything that related to office automation. And the third category of my proposal in a budget amendment is that this board approved back in, I want to say January, spreading of gravel, $3,240 to MAG construction or contracting, and $5,000 for painting of the garage. So that's the basis for the proposed changes as a budget amendment for special assessment and for general fund.
Okay, any questions for Bill? All right, so I will begin reading the resolution 2023-005. Resolution of the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District of Lee County, Florida, adopting budget amendment 2023-1, establishing effective date. Whereas the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District of Lee County, Florida, has adopted a budget for fiscal year 2022 to 2023, and whereas the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District desires to reallocate expenditure line items based on actual year-to-date expenditures for the general fund and the special assessment fund. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District of Lee County, Florida, that one budgeted amendment 2023, -1, which is attached here to and incorporated herein by this reference, is hereby adopted. The resolution will take effect immediately upon its adoption. The foregoing resolution was offered by Commissioner
Fry.
Who moved the resolution's adoption. The motion was seconded by Commissioner Hammond, and upon being put to a vote, the vote was as follows. And we have time for discussion here, I would imagine, or if we need one.
Yeah, Duncan, I have a comment on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't really object to the substance of the resolution, but under the description of amendment, Bill Fry says for the general fund to appropriate fiscal year 2023 amended expenditures to correct the failure of the prior treasurer and board to include funding, blah, blah, blah. I think that's more immature and unprofessional behavior by Mr. Fry. And I think it could simply say to include funding the new garage. And I don't know why with everything that Mr. Fry puts forward, he needs to find a boogeyman or somebody to blame rather than just move ahead with the business at hand.
I think in October you'll find a audit finding. I think it's the second audit finding that they take exception with that budget line and the assignment of that $46,000 in invoiced but not accomplished or paid that Renee did as a journal entry in late
I think the
September,
description-
early October.
Yeah.
And so one of the findings is, our response is going to be how we address that.
So the description of the amendment, I don't think should be opinionated in any way, so I would say, let's go ahead and, get rid of, to correct the failure of the prior treasurer and board, and then just have it continue to include funding, the new garage. Correct? Is that what you're saying, Michael?
I agree. Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you.
Yeah, I just think there really shouldn't be an opinion there, so it's really just a factual description.
You wanna reload and do this? Or we can just update it now?
Well, I just, I deleted it and signed it, I got the initial too. All right,
This is the corrected one will also have to be posted.
so again,
The corrected one will also have to be posted
okay,
as a document from.
The corrected one is hopefully an approved resolution that gets posted on the website once it's signed.
Yeah, we can scan it and post it, the PDF of it.
Yeah, I have to scan, it has to be scanned and posted. Both of these have to be scanned and sent to me so I can first on the resolution for the special assessment, I can get Russ Wire working on it. But this one also has to be posted on the website as an
all right,
approved resolution, if it's approved.
all right, so Commissioner, me, yes. Commissioner Hammond,
Yes.
Commissioner Fry,
Yes,
Commissioner Philipsak,
Yes, with the revised language.
Commissioner Burns.
With the revised language, yes.
Okay. Initial error. Sign here. Okay, moving on to 6A, Jason Martin and Brian Dabrowski lawsuits. With respect to Jason Martin, we don't have any updates to disclose. However, we do need to discuss potentially going into an executive session sometime after the second budget meeting, because there is proposed mediation, and obviously the board will have to discuss with our attorney and meet prior to that. So assuming, I think the proposed date was the 13th of October, so sometime from either the 23rd or the 30th to the 13th, we would have to go in, into an executive session or postpone the date. So that's something we can just,
What's the date? Is that the date you're having mediation?
there's nothing set yet. That's a preliminary date. So, but obviously, let's say I can't go to mediation without knowing the board's opinion and on the matter. So I don't think this is something we would discuss in public. This would be something in an executive session. So I think on the 30th or the 23rd. Now, are those budget only discussions, or could we set a date on one of those meetings? Dates? So maybe we want to discuss setting a date, an executive session date, but I'd have to confirm with Maggie Mooney. So I think we're too preliminary at this point. It's just too close to be able to do this right now without confirming her schedule.
Well, it's not just her.
Right, and it could be, and yeah.
For and our insurance company.
Yeah.
Right, and court reporter.
There's a lot of moving parts. just trying to think of how we can set this executive session. Any recommendations from other board members of how this should be handled?
Well, having done this in the past, I know how they work, I know how they get set up, I know what takes place, with them. But, and we have now 2 lawsuits, not 1. My
Correct.
first question would be, is it possible that we could set it up to discuss both of them on the same day? Because each attorney, both of them are going to charge from the time they get in their car until the time they get home or back to their office at their several $100s an hour hourly rate.
I think that's a good point. I'm not
We
sure.
pay for our attorney. We pay this movie. The insurance company pays for
Sure.
our other attorney up to a certain amount of money, and then we have to take it over.
Correct.
All of the travel costs, Highland Girl, parking, the court reporter will generally be paid by the law offices and then charged back to us. So these are factors to take into consideration. That's number 1. Number 2, my understanding is that Nebraska's was just recently filed. And Jesse told me this morning, he just got served with it like this week.
So we're a little farther behind on the Nebraska,
Yeah.
which could cause a challenge.
Right. And, my own personal position from having spent many years being a lawyer is that, there are certain things that might be able to be done on former Chief Martin's lawsuit that might end up with having it be dismissed. But since I can't talk with the attorneys, once the board authorizes me, I can't make those suggestions.
So Brian Dabrowski's lawsuit was served to us on August 31st, and I will scan that to the board members as it's public record. I will go ahead and consult with Maggie Mooney as to our next steps, and I will keep the board posted.
Okay.
All right. One thing that did occur just yesterday is that the same law firm has been assigned to the Brian Dabrowski case officially. We were asking for it because of synergies. It just, like we were talking about, it makes sense. Moving on to reoccurring business 6C, because we already did 6B. So 6C, Chief's report. Jesse.
All right, so I wrote this on before August 16th because that was the original meeting. We ran 3 EMS calls, 1 fire call that last month. Obviously that has changed since then. I haven't updated this. Chris Kay has resigned from the department. He found a job at another fire department, so good for him. I'm happy for him. But with his loss, Carter Birchall, he was here prior to the Exodus, and I verbally spoke to him at that time when I was bringing people back, and he was in paramedic school. So he finished paramedic school, and now he's back on the island working as an EMT, and we'll be getting his paramedic sometime in December. 0 capital purchases or disposals. Stairs on the east side are still terrible. I looked to get 3 bids, and I've contacted the 3 people that have not given me my bid yet, so I'll be contacting them again this week. MES they sent 10 sets of boots. I'm waiting on the gloves and the hoods. I'll bring everything out. The trousers and the coats are 12 weeks out. Now we're about 8 weeks out. 9 weeks out, something like that. But we have enough bunker gear right now to make sure everybody's taken care of. Some of the gear that Jason had purchased prior to, they were bought for specific people. We're just putting that in use. My gear is now serviceable for somebody else to use. I just said they got to be short, bald, and heavy. So hopefully they'll fit in it.
The 6 they're hiring
Exactly.
profile.
Exactly. Yep. The command staff's been working diligently on repairs and maintenance for the equipment here on the department. We're trying to set up a maintenance plan for our packs, our hoses, our pumps, things that have been lacking or haven't been in my I haven't found yet that they've been addressed or tested, so I'm working on that as well. We had that luncheon on August 6th. Dan did show up. I thought it went well. I think we had pretty good feedback on it. Had more people show up than I expected. I think we had 30 kids here at one point.
Yeah, it was very well received. Tom's presentation was well, and then of course you helped that as well. So it was good that we need to do more of that.
Yeah.
Because, there was a dozen homeowners.
Right.
Who was there, 2 renters popped by, but,
The goal is to do that in February.
yeah.
To do that
When
in
there's
February.
more people on that.
More residents that are here around that time. Plus, we're gonna do one in October, like a little luncheon or probably a brunch after the 3-day drinking party thing that they put on over there at the Duncan's people. Dr. Augustine, Colin, and Paul came out here on the 21st. It was a great meeting. We had a good, yes.
We're Colin and Paul.
They're both deputy chiefs of EMS. So we just had, Paul DeCozo and Colin. Slipped my mind. We sat here, we had lunch. We talked a lot about, how the island works, the challenges we have in, at our location. Dr. Augustine, Paul was the guy that he does all the helicopter flight medic stuff. So it was a very good meeting. He's had Terry and Terry's husband, Perry, for the airstrip. They showed up. We got to talk about the airstrip. Larry he's designed equipment, not FFA regulated, but it's all over the world now for the flight, for the pilots to actually use it as a resource to fly. So currently, I didn't know this, but currently, when Page Field is covered, they don't fly. They just don't, because they don't know what the weather's like out here. So with that being said, with this new Lee County EMS and Larry talking, Paul's talked about buying multiple, I'll call them weather stations, not what they are, but they'll put one out here, they'll put one, on Boca, they'll put one in Captiva where they land. So it was a very good meeting for them. Also, we're talking about putting, they can fly it, FRI, I think it is. So if you see, the helicopter landing pads, you see them on hospitals and stuff, we put that on the airstrip, something in with an H and a 30-foot diameter, they'll fly more out here because then they can do a visual landing. So that was a good thing. So we'll be able to get them to respond more often than not. Shovel was here as well from UCEPA. Steve, the manager of the boat club, still dealing with him, trying to get us a possible membership to that. I don't believe that's gonna happen, so we'll have to look at. Also called Keels and Wheels to fix that boat. I talked to Kevin. Anyways, I spoke to Keels and Wheels. We were supposed to be on the docket for last week to get fixed, just to get us up and running, to run the crews back and forth, and I haven't heard anything, so I called him again on Friday, left a message. I'll call him again on Tuesday, so I'm sure we'll close on Monday to get our boat running. What else? The mule is here. It was treated. It's not running the best yet. I got Clippy coming out tomorrow. We need the carburetor cleaned. I think we got some old ethanol in there, the varnish in it. I think it's just the carburetor issue. That'll be fixed. We talked about Cliff running the tractor on the roads. I need to know if we're liable or responsible for the fuel. Is the fire department responsible for the diesel fuel, or is that gonna come out of a specific different budget? Like, I have no problem with it.
It's a different line item, but I believe we are responsible.
Correct. Okay, so that's fine. I'm looking at buying a larger diesel tank to put on that trailer down there. I've gotten a couple quotes. What we'll do is we'll get a diesel tank and a gasoline tank on it, and a couple times a month, if we need to, we'll trailer or get a barge across via Duncan, trailer it down, fill them up, bring it back out here, and we'll be good for diesel for the tractor as well as for the vehicles. And gasoline, we only have a few products that run gas now. Now the mule does, and a couple chainsaws. That's all we have. Really
At no charge from our barge.
Correct.
Just to clarify.
Yep, free.
Where is the large gasoline tank going to be, and how will it be protected?
Okay, so I looked into that too. You don't have to, it'll be on that trailer, so it's a mobile view. It's like having one on the back of a pickup truck. You don't have to have any kind of storage. I've already done all the research on it. If you were to put it and place it here, and then it was picked up by a sked and driven or whatever, then you would have to have a drainage field and catch-all field. Per the way the statute is written, you don't when it's mobile. So that's how that'll work.
Where's the trailer again?
Well, it's right there right now, but we'll probably put it in front of the tractor. It'll be moved.
So anybody in the public can come by and siphon it?
Well,
Put a lot of
I need,
on the
I can do that, but right now we have 15 gallons of gas, 10 gallons of diesel on the truck over there. They can take those cans anytime they want. So I mean, at least it's
I understand.
here.
I'm just thinking back to after Charlie, we brought a gas tank out here. And it was secured, and the first night somebody came by and siphoned it, so they took it back across and refilled it, put it back across, locked it down, and somebody came and siphoned it through the vent.
Okay, well, I hope that wouldn't happen. I don't have all the answers. I do. We will figure out a way to secure it because it's going to have a nozzle for a pump off. So as long as we can lock that up, I don't think that'll be an issue. But I understand the concern. I just taking the gasoline back and forth to me is more of a hazard than it is having it here and doing it maybe twice a month, maybe every couple of months. I did look at the weight difference, you know, the actual weight on that trailer. I called the trailer company, so we're good to put these two items on there. I think it's a good idea in the right direction. It'll be a capital expense, but not huge. Yep, and I think that's it. Any questions, comments, concerns? Two. Yes.
Driving up here today, I saw a bunch of bunker gear hanging over the railing. Is that from the storm? or
Yes.
something else? And the other thing is, you and I discussed this about a month ago. I called you. What's going on with the pumps on the brush trucks?
We got the primers are already installed. So when the previous command staff changed out the primers, they turned the primers into a water system versus a primer system. So they removed the solenoids as well as the primers. Now the primers that showed up from CET have a little a bulb on it, which is when you fill with oil. So that way, in my opinion, they'll work better and work longer, but the solenoids were removed and gone. So the solenoid's been purchased. They'll be out here tomorrow. Everything will be back up and run tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Yep. I guess I should have that in there. Forgotten. Sorry.
That's what you said last month.
No, I
talked to you on the phone.
Well, yes, but I didn't have anything last month to tell you because I still have it, but I got it. I have it.
Thanks, guys.
You know.
Thank you, Chief Jesse.
Yes, sir.
Not interim chief,
Oh, yeah.
Chief Jesse.
We all day to change that.
All right, moving on to the treasurer's report. I think we have two, right, Bill?
Yes, the one for June that was tabled at the July meeting and the one for July. They've been posted for weeks. Are there any questions
Good with it.
or clarifications required?
Any questions for the treasurer on the June 30th report? One thing that still is not resolved is if you look on page 3, 4C. So technically, we were able to upgrade QuickBooks, but it's been a pain in the butt. So we upgraded our QuickBooks to the 2023 version, but the people listed on the account are still Richard Craven and Richard Pepper. And I'm having a really hard time dealing with the folks at QuickBooks out of the country to explain to them that this is a fireboard and people change and this is old information. So what I'd like to state on the record is I'd like to create a document stating that stating the current board members and giving them a document that could actually show up on our minutes, because they said they want to check it on the minutes on the website. So I'd like to prepare a QuickBooks document so they can update the records, because I'm having a hard time with that. Is that okay with everyone? I don't think we need a motion here, just a document to post on the website regarding QuickBooks and the current board members.
Yes.
Okay,
Good with that?
all right. We have a motion to accept Commissioner Fry's treasure, or the treasurer's report, please. June 30th.
I have July 19 and I have August 8. Yeah, I have no silver lining.
Maybe that's good. June.
Right, but it was June,
Month ending,
month ending
Okay.
June 30th.
that's
Yes.
different. Okay, got it.
We have a motion.
Motion to accept.
Okay, do I have a second? So I'll second the minutes, or excuse me, the treasurer's report for month ending June 30th. Do we have any further discussion or public comment? All in favor to accept the minute or the treasurer's report? Aye.
Aye.
Based on the.
Aye.
No,
Okay. I'm assuming. Number 1C, I don't know whether that's the failure of the district's last chairman, and that's the kind of stuff that we were referring to in the beginning of the conversation today, and hopefully we can get to a point where we just state the facts. Moving on now to the next treasurer's report. I don't have that in front of me. What's the date on that? It's for month ending July 31st. Dated August 8th. Any questions for Commissioner Fry? I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report. August 8th treasurer's report.
no motion.
Okay, so moved by Commissioner Hammond. I read too much today out loud. Commissioner Hammond made the motion. May I have a second, please? I'll second it. Any further discussion or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Once again, just based on the wording.
Yeah, I'm opposed based on the wording also. It's unnecessary.
All right, the treasurer's report was approved 3-2. And again, we'd ask in future reports to exclude any type of derogatory comments. Next one, do we have one more? Or is that it?
Insurance plans.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying that was it for the
That's on
treasurer's report.
All
All right, moving on to insurance claims and equipment replacements. We have no update on the insurance claim. Unfortunately, we had the second inspection back about a month and a half ago, almost 2 months ago, I believe. And we haven't received any report on that. I asked the team over at Andy's office about an update, and they have zero update to report. Now, equipment replacements. Jesse, do you want to jump in about or I guess we're going to fix the boat. That's
yes, as it stands now, I'm gonna get heels and wheels, which they are now. They have a shop over there at Pineland. They don't have a mechanic on hand there. They send a mechanic over from their place in Punta Gorda twice a week. So that's kind of where we're at with it. I will contact him again on Tuesday to try to have him look at our boat, tell us what's wrong with it, if it's even worth fixing. If it's not, then I'll bring it to the board's attention our next meeting. And then we'll go from there.
Clarify which boat are we talking about?
The Boca Grande donation boat that has been a terrible headache.
The one you described it as a piece of garbage?
Oh, it's worse than that. Oh, while we're on that topic, the old Dave Meister boat is still in the still in the barn over there. Because I guess we didn't accept the insurance claim check, so I've been informed it's there, it needs to come out. So I'm working with Tom about that as well. We do have the trailer over there that is set, that's more than likely what's gonna happen, we're gonna move it out of there and on that trailer. But insurance never came to get it, because I think we never accepted the check for it. That's the only thing I can think of, but I
And
got
I'll
a
circle
call.
back with Andy's team on that as well, you know, because it all ties into
Yes.
what they're doing for us, so.
But they undervalue.
It was 26 with the initial.
Undervalued, but I think the issue is that it was tied in with the others, no, maybe not. I'm gonna speak on that.
There. I'll talk to Andy. Andy told me not to deposit that check yet, and I'll find out, if and when it's okay with our attorney. I think that's it for.
Who's Andy?
Fuchsia.
Okay.
Yeah, he's our insurance.
Our
attorney.
insurance company.
Yes.
Okay.
Jesse, I don't think you want to dispose of the boat until you get an okay from the attorney.
Correct. No disposing, just moving it off the rack onto the trailer, because they
Right.
want that space. No disposing.
All right, access way maintenance, Commissioner Hammond.
Yeah, so we've had a string of bad rainstorms, obviously. Yes, understand. As soon as the roads dry out, we have a lot of work to do. We have the volunteers working on the tractors, now have with your both the first one.
Oh, read it. I'm sorry, I meant to say that on my chief report as well. We need to figure out how we're gonna pay him.
Yep.
It's not, obviously, I don't think it's an EMT pay, I think it's a different pay cycle.
Yep.
And how does he get paid? Will he get paid on his paycheck out of here, or will it be a different paycheck cut?
Okay.
Just let me know. So I can let him know. Okay.
So with that, we have, now, some volunteer time, from the Highsmith. We also, I can't say enough, thank yous to Sherman for, he stepped up and has done all sorts of things. The roads, grooming the roads and getting some of the rough spots, was very called for, and we appreciate his efforts there. So, we'll start working on the secondary roads and doing what we can on the primary roads until we get past rainy season. I don't have official confirmation, but I think we have the MHA, the Mark Justice proposal for his FEMA is going to contract with Mark Justice in order to do the major road repairs. And everybody feels that needs to hold off until after we get past rainy season and we have some dry roads to actually repair. So that'll be a little bit further down the road. But in the meantime, we're going to go through and scrape and do as much as we can. There's a huge breach over there by that nurse strip. Got to do something there.
So I did receive verbal confirmation. I haven't received it in writing yet, but I received verbal confirmation from Scott Matthews' boss. And his boss, so it'll be Joe Newman and Scott Crawford, I believe, Steve Crawford. That they are going to pay the MHA invoice for them to do the roads. And I think that was what, 26,000, 22,000?
20,000.
Okay.
About half of that was material and half of it was labor to spread out and pack it down. But they were only talking about the five, the big five
Arteries, yeah.
5 arteries, and that's good. That's for sure business and that's necessary. But I want everyone to know that we are also aware that the side streets are pretty hacked up too, and those will be the ones we'll focus on with the tractor here.
And also from this recent storm, there was some surge on some of those roads as well. So there's some work to do again. But what I wanted to mention was my barge company that I own 50% of, we will be transporting the material free of charge. I think there's 60 bags that will be coming out for the road in that budget from MHA, I believe.
Yeah,
And,
did you talk to Mark about
not yet because we haven't got the check, but we will provide that service free of charge.
it? Okay. Good. Yeah, that's all from that.
All right, any public input on non-agenda items?
We're going to approach Commissioner Dwayne for any assistance with any of these projects.
Which specific ones are you thinking?
I think of the roads, deep brought up the airstrip. Mr. Wayne said to get back to over 2 or 3 things we want to focus on, and see if we get us funds.
I think that's a really good point, Ed. I know I'd like to circle back with the UCCA and make that a joint effort, just to make sure. But from the road side, I believe we asked him that question since when he was here, correct?
I don't know. I don't remember when you talked specifically about anything in particular.
Yeah.
But I do remember him saying that, you know, he needs to be task-specific tasks, well-defined tasks that he could help us out with. So we could certainly take him on the road situation. I also want to get a hold of Mark Justice and get, you know, now that we've, you know, you start driving around the island and start looking at what's going on. I want to have a conversation with Mark and Jeff and get their opinion on how far that money can be stretched that they're getting.
All right. Any other public input on non-agenda items? The next meeting date will be on Saturday. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
Wait, Doug, and I think Lisa Walker's got her hand up.
Go ahead, Lisa. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
No, that's fine. I apologize about the timing, but I would like to circle back for a minute to this email. I understand that as a board, you guys are governed by sunshine laws and advice from the attorney, but as constituents for an elected position and someone who holds 2 positions on the board, what can we formally have in writing or as stated that behavior will no longer happen?
That's a good question. What the board, my approach here would be to see if there's changes first after today's meeting, and if not, I think we would have to develop a civility code or a conduct code or some type of a code. What are the other board members' thoughts on that?
I agree with you. Let's see what happens.
Okay, does that answer work?
You know, it's just, it erodes the culture, it's harassment, and it's not something that should be brushed under. I think that the more we're all together and we have some accountability for behaviors, I think is important.
You know, we are all elected officials here in a public office, and, you know, I think being professional and being respectful are major tenets that we have to abide to. But if it becomes an issue, we can create those codes and clearly define them. Any other questions, Lisa?
Thank you. No.
Zeke, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I endorse Lisa Walker's concern that the secretary and the treasurer is injecting his own biases and feelings towards his predecessors, and it is unseemly. And I hope that it will stop. I'm encouraged that the board is aware of it and concerned about it. Just a little bit about it wasn't on the agenda, so I feel like I can bring it up. The procedure of naming Jesse as chief, permanent chief, I don't have any problem at all with the result, but the procedure, as David Baum pointed out, was very convoluted. And if the board had selected other chiefs without a contract, just on their word that they were not going to charge this or that or whatever, we probably would have had a chief 3 or 4 months ago. The contract is quite important, I think, to the substance of the job. And so I'm just amazed that it wasn't picked apart by perhaps the treasurer or the secretary or something like that. And I was a little disgruntled that it wasn't on the agenda to choose a chief. The agenda said that you would discuss the chief candidates and the Florida certifications, not that you would be selecting a chief. I just think that's a little unordinary. I'd also like to express my appreciation for Michael Phillips's suggestion that Upper Captiva, bridgeless barrier island with a fire department without a boat, is verging on the ridiculous. He brought up several points that a boat on the island is basically necessary to serve your constituents the way they have been served in the past. And I certainly wouldn't want to think that this board wants to provide less service than was provided by previous boards, especially with the bad mouthing of the predecessors on the board. So and also the last point I want to make in terms of the budget, I was amazed how boring and convoluted it was in the 55 minutes that the treasurer took to go through his 20 pages of proposed budget, and then glazed his eyes when the resolution was read in public. It was confusing. Maybe I'm the only one that was confused by his delivery and his proposition of a budget. I thought the preliminary budget hearing was coming up, at which time it would be more appropriate to go through line items on the budget for discussion.
This would be an agenda item, so I'm gonna kind of cut you there just because
okay.
That you could have discussed, but thank you very much for your comments. Do we have any other public input on non-agenda items? All right, our next meeting date is on September 9th at 10 a.m. Saturday. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
I'll set.
All right. Any further discussion or public comment? All in favor to adjourn? Aye.
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 Those who participate.
Saturday, I got 3 minutes to get the.
Look, who's the captain today? Jesse?
Oh,
Is it Jesse as the captain?
give a call.
I don't have Jesse's number.
I have, I'll call.
He's definitely.
He's always on time.
Yeah.
If it was 10,
You can hang out for a minute?
Yes.
I don't need like 3 to 5 minutes. Okay.
Did we solve it?
He's about, I just walked him down, just so he doesn't, he's gotta get over the island roll too.
You fell off.
Or, yeah, after that.